I'd like to call to order the May 6th, 2026 regular meeting of the South Burlington School Board. The first item on the agenda was a proposed executive session. However, we did not need to go into executive session, so we canceled the executive session. The next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on the agenda is announcements. Does the board have any announcements?
Demo.
Okay, Dan will be here. All right. Hearing none. The next item is to review and accept the agenda. So for the rest of the night, we have comments from the public, followed by the student representative report, followed by the superintendent's report. And we have some middle school students here to give us their thoughts, which is great. Then around 6:30, we have a community forum to talk about ENDS policy. Then we have a few action items: authorizing radio ad, Friends policy update, charging a legislative advocacy committee, considering transferring money from the general fund to the food service fund for child nutrition, and an additional employee added to the employee severance plan. After that, we had two discussion items. They're both first readings of policies that need to get updated. So the wellness policy and the student use of cell phone policy. And then we have a consent agenda. Are there any revisions to the agenda? All right, hearing none. The next item on the agenda is comments from the public. So there's 3 times that you can comment to the board. The first is this comment from the public section, and this is about any topic. You could talk about what's on the agenda, you can talk about what's not on the agenda. You can also comment before we take action on anything. And if a meeting is a specially warned community forum, and this one happens to be one of them, you'll be able to talk about the topics that are on the agenda. The special thing about the community forum is that that's the only time when the board can respond to the public, and only on the topics forum. So anything you say during comments from the public, we won't respond to. However, at 6:30 tonight, during the community forum, we would love to go back and forth with anybody in the community who wants to talk about the topic. So please do not violate anybody's privacy with your public comments. Official complaints or grievances cannot be filed during public comment. So with that, is there anybody who would like to give public comment? Wait, we have somebody in the room. And you may introduce yourself if you'd like.
Yes, hello. My name is Brittany Almasalki, and I have been an active member of the SP Curriculum Committee since its inception last fall. We as a committee have been tasked with identifying specific actionable improvements for the SBSD curriculum. And through our research, we aim to offer constructive feedback that informs and strengthens ongoing curricular development. It is important to note that this committee was not informed of a massive change. Rather, at the April 30th Curriculum Committee meeting, led by the Executive Director of Learning, we were told of the elimination of Honors American Studies. Furthermore, this unilateral decision not only eliminated the only honors course we have left at SB, but also changed the entire 10th grade curriculum, eliminating all American Studies courses. The options presented for next year are English 10, or AP Seminar, and History 10. My concern is not merely with this huge curriculum shift, but with the process by which it was handled. This decision was made behind closed doors with zero consultation with the high school English department chair or the English faculty. This lack of transparency also extended to the students including the 130 incoming sophomores who had already registered for Honors American Studies. HA served as a critical bridge course that gave students time to develop their writing, reasoning, studying, and time management skills in a less pressured situation. Forcing 10th graders into a high-stakes AP English environment without a proper foundation risks setting them up for academic failure. The justifications provided were inconsistent and raised several urgent questions. Some cited teacher deficits as responsible for the shift. However, it was confirmed that the high school intends to run 6 to 7 sections of AP seminar to accommodate the 130 enrolled students. If staffing numbers remain the same, this deficit argument is factually unsupported. In addition, according to College Board, AP seminar teachers must complete specific summer professional learning before teaching the course. I recently had a meeting with the high school principal, and he told me that an AP cybersecurity class could not be run this fall due to lack of time necessary for training. It's unclear how the district can now guarantee that teachers for the 7 sections of AP seminar will be certified in the same timeframe, or how an entirely new curriculum can be developed in the next few months and fleshed out in a way that benefits the students. More alarmingly, when asked clarifying questions, the SB Executive Director of Learning admitted she does not know what Honors American is because she's new to the district. Yet, in her capacity, she approved its removal based solely on the rigor of the AP label and the decision from an unknown committee. No one seems to be able to tell me who made this decision. I only know who did not. A decision that impacts the educational trajectory of over 100 students should be collaborative and transparent, not a top-down mandate issued in a vacuum. I requested the board pause its implementation until a formal review, including input from the English department and the affected families, can be conducted. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there other public comment? Take a turn.
Find it shocking, but I wasn't going to speak tonight, but now I'm going to. Because my name's Mark David. In the district, I have one daughter who's still here, one who's at Barnard College, who's been in South Burlington, graduated 2 years ago. I am also very concerned about Honors American Studies. I think it's probably a done deal, but I just would like to make you aware of some numbers if I can. So 2 years ago, my second daughter, Libby, took Honors American. That year, there were 89 students. This class has been running since the 1990s. It's been co-taught for 22 years by Mark Lewis and Mark McFadden. Sorry, Greg Lewis and Mark McFadden. A long time. Last year, there were 100 students who signed up for it after a group of parents and students raised hell and said, don't cancel it on our watch. And you didn't. Thank you. This year, there's 130 students signed up for it, all of whom knew the rigor they were signing up for, but they still signed up for it. One of the toughest classes at South Burlington High School, but also one of the most instrumental. I'm going to keep talking until you guys tell me that somebody is raising their hand online, because there's 2 alumni that were hoping to call in, but they couldn't find the Zoom link to get online. And I want to make sure they have an opportunity to share their views with you. You see one?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there more public comment? And for those who are just joining us, this is an opportunity for public comment about any topic. And then also at 6:30, we'll be talking about the EDS policy updates. Is there anybody online?
Yeah.
Okay. Would you please recognize them?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, I'm Mary Gable. I'm just sitting on Rama's laptop actually, but
Okay.
I'm a rising junior at Barnard College at Columbia University. I was raised in the South Burlington School District and I graduated in 2024, and I want to talk about my experience with Honors American Studies and its importance to the district. So Honors American Studies was absolutely the most influential class that I took at SBHS, and it was the only class, including many AP courses, that had any hope of preparing me for college level coursework. Choosing to terminate Honors American Studies in the SPHS curriculum is an absolute insult to any claim by SPHS of supporting or listening to students and families, and to any claim to any investment in academic rigor. As I told an SPHS family who came to tour my campus last week, Honors American was the primary reason that I came into university with an understanding not only of American history, but of how to properly read a textbook or a primary source, how to take comprehensive notes on those, how to succeed on exams, and most importantly, how to think critically and independently. SPHS's AP courses have historically not met the level of rigor that Honors American has, and have come nowhere near preparing students for university. I was informed that the Executive Director of Learning for South Burlington School District approved the decision to replace Honors American with a new AP or a new curriculum under the impression that because it's an AP course, it is therefore a rigorous course. To substitute Honors American with an unsupported, untested AP class, which has not been previously run at SPHS, is not an adequate solution. The number of students registered in Honors American continues to be high, as well as the interest in the course by younger students, and that interest is echoed by families in the community whose children are as young as elementary school, but who have heard about the importance of the class. Eliminating Honors American doesn't benefit anyone. It just removes one of the very few spaces where rigorous interdisciplinary learning is happening at SPHS. I would like to be able to tell the families of the children that I babysit and the younger siblings of my friends, as well as the greater South Burlington community, that SPHS invests in the academic success of its students, but I feel that the termination of Honors American Studies makes that impossible for it to be the truth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there more comments?
No one. Or expressed it.
I think it's the same.
It's the same one, yeah,
Okay,
but it might be a
It might be
different
Rama,
person.
wrong.
Is it Rama now? It might be, we should check. and-
sure. Go ahead.
I
Sure.
guess we could, yeah.
Rama, did you want to?
Hello,
Hi,
Hello.
Rama.
Hi, Rama.
you can hear me?
Yes.
Yes, this is Rama. Um, so I'd just like to introduce myself. My name is Rama Alnami, and I'm a current sophomore at Columbia University. I started in the South Burlington School District as a preschooler at Orchard School, and I graduated from the high school in 2024, and I'm currently a Questbridge Scholar, majoring in anthropology and astrophysics. I'd like to start by reading the South Burlington School District mission statement. That's listed on the district's website, and it says, the mission of the South Burlington School District, a community committed to excellence in education, is to ensure that each student possesses the knowledge, skills, and character to create a successful and responsible life. We will do this by building safe, caring, and challenging learning environments, fostering family and community partnerships, utilizing global resources, and inspiring lifelong learning. So for my comment today, I'd like to focus on the aspect of the mission statement that aims to create challenging learning environments and curating skills that create a successful and responsible life for students. So for the past few years, from what I've seen, I've seen a continued degradation of academic rigor at the South Burlington School District. From the policy limiting teachers to giving a lowest possible grade of 50% to any student for any reason, despite performance, despite not even taking exams, and the continued elimination of courses that are proven to be rigorous, I think is completely contradictory to that mission statement. This is beyond disappointing and embarrassing to see as someone who grew up in this district and has a lot of love for the people there. The board and the administration have a duty to these students, these families, and these teachers to be making conscientious decisions. And from everything I've seen, those in power at our district have failed on every count. This isn't just about Honors American. I know this course was really important to a lot of people, me being one of them. And those teachers in particular were extremely influential in my academic career. But the overall trend of our district is putting students in a position that sets them up to fail. And given how pivotal of a decision this is, I have not heard any valid justification from the board or from the administration. And I'd like to tell the board that, and of course those in power, that what they are doing is harming students. And every action I've seen that they've taken works to undermine the hard work that teachers and parents and students have put in to secure their future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments in the room? Okay, the next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report. And Suzanne is here in Joe's place. So are there any report?
Let's focus on student learning.
Oh.
We can also go after.
My
Yeah, you
mistake,
go after.
sorry, my mistake. So the next item on the agenda is actually the student representative report. So these are our student reps, take it away.
Yeah, on Thursday, May 7th, the high school will be holding the One Act plays in the auditorium at 7 p.m. So come support the student directors.
And this Friday, I know I mentioned this last time, is Spring Community Service Day for SLAM. So seniors who are SLAM leaders will be going out to nonprofit community locations with their freshman advisories for a day of community service and fun. They will then compete in the SLAM Olympics, where we all play team builders on the turf. And we hope everyone has a really fun day.
And then a bit of a student spotlight, the high school robotics team competed at the first robotics world competition in Houston, Texas, which is the world's largest high school robotics competition. They were very successful and won the Rookie All-Star Award, which awarded for being the best rookie team in their division, making them one of the 8 best rookie teams in the world. So congrats to them. And that's all we got.
All right, thank you. Are there any board questions? For student rep?
Did you say that's the first world robotics competition?
Yeah.
That. Cool.
It's great. Okay, now it really is time for the superintendent report. And Suzanne Grundling, our middle school principal, is here sitting in place of Joe, our superintendent. Is there anything you'd like to report on?
Great. Yes, and then we've got some students here to talk to the board as well, but I want to start out by recognizing this is Teacher Appreciation Week, and we take this opportunity to recognize our teachers, all of our staff throughout all of our buildings, and also wanted to thank our PTOs that play a really pivotal role in helping us recognize the really truly inspiring work that all of our staff members do every day. So thank you. And today is also I see Sarah Pineda in the back there. It is also our National Nurses Day today on Wednesday, May 6th as well. And we brought, and I'm just gonna move over and I'm gonna check with the students on if they would be comfortable standing or if they would like to bring chairs over,
Sure.
if that's okay.
Maybe
If
take
you want
some
to
seats. at
bring
the-
chairs over, we can move a couple chairs up and give you a really comfortable place. See Dora coming in the room, want to grab a couple chairs from that side, Dora, perfectly. Put them right here, I think we have 9 now, so we need 9 chairs. And we brought a really special group in our school called our peer leadership team. And a little later in the meeting, you'll meet our assistant principal that will start July 1st. One of the roles that peer leadership has done in our school is they also interview many of our candidates that we see through. And they'd like to take an opportunity to first tell you a little bit about peer leadership and the roles that they play in not only our school, but throughout the South Burlington community and the greater Chittenden County area. Do you guys want to start off maybe by introducing yourselves, or is that part of?
No, we can introduce it, maybe how many years you've been doing peer leadership?
Okay, my name is Gracie. I'm in 7th grade, and this is my 2nd year doing peer leadership. My name is Stella. I'm in 8th grade, and this is my 2nd year. My name is Caitlin. I'm in 8th grade, and this is my 3rd year doing peer leadership. My name is Nora. I'm in 7th grade, and this is my 2nd year doing peer leadership. My name is Lillian. I'm in 2nd grade, 7th grade, and this is my 1st year doing peer leadership. My name is Monica. I'm in 7th grade, and this is my 2nd year doing peer leadership. My name is Eloise. I'm in 7th grade, and this is my 2nd. My name is Emily. I'm in 7th grade, and this is my 1st year doing peer leadership.
My name is Hondemir. I'm in 7th grade, and this is my 2nd year doing peer leadership.
Who might be starting out?
Hi, should I stand up? Is that good?
Yeah,
Okay.
whatever you like, whatever you're.
So, Peer Leadership is a club at FHT that is focused on service for others in our school, the South Burlington community, and just the larger state in the world.
Peer leadership is for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. To be a peer leader, you have to complete an application and write about why leadership is an honor and a responsibility at the same time. We also had to give ideas for service projects we might like to do and have 2 FHT teachers and staff members sign off to support our application.
This year, we have over 30 students in peer leadership, and we meet every Friday morning before school. With such a big number of leaders, we just decided to split into 5 action groups.
These action groups are focused on different service projects. We have a representative from each action group. So here we will give a small example of what we are doing in each of our groups.
We're in the group that hosted a social to raise money for the Humane Society. And we raised, 1,100. So we spent a few months planning and contacting like local businesses to like get this stuff, and then that we need to prepare for the social. And then when we did, it was a blast. It was really fun. I think most everyone enjoyed it. 7th graders, 8th graders. How was it? Okay. And so on May 12th, during the school day, we will go on a quick field trip to deliver the money for the Humane Society. Okay, so our group is called the Appreciation Nation, and we're gonna go to Quarry Hill residence, and we're gonna go right in the seniors day.
So we've been planning this for a few months. We've been trying to contact the Quarry Hill residents. We hit a little bumps in the road, but we've managed to contact them. And for right now, we're planning to visit them on May 14th and kind of like just like make their day.
I'm supposed to community drives, and we are starting a toy drive for the Ronald McDonald House. It started on May 1st and is going until May 15th. And then we're gonna deliver it to the kids' families.
So my group, we're called the Positive People, and we've been doing a couple things this year, kind of like small things, but like they're small but mighty. And we've made little posters for around our schools that like have little like positive message on them. And that took like a little while, and we just finished that like 2 weeks ago, I think. And right now we're painting rocks, and they're going to Quarry Hill, like one group's going to Quarry Hill, and so we make little painted rocks, and we are going to like they have little messages on them. And we haven't figured out the full details yet. We might be going with them to deliver the rocks and just say hello, and yeah, like Andrea said, like make their day. And yeah, that's kind of what we've done this year. Yeah.
So one of our groups is called the Appreciation Group, and every year we choose a staff group to highlight. In years past, we recognized the custodians and the recess monitors, and this year we recognize the cafeteria staff, and we highlight them and show our appreciation.
Thank you for inviting us here tonight to learn more about FHTMS peer leadership. We are happy to tell you more or answer any questions you may have for us. Thank you.
So they also are going to tell you a little bit about what experiences they would want to have in South Burlington schools by the end of their 12th grade year. But I did want to pause to see if you have some questions for them around peer leadership. I'm just reflecting on the people here who also interviewed Dr. Clark. That was one of the stops through, was to be interviewed by the middle school peer leadership while he's part of the rotation and tour through the building. So does anyone have questions about any of the projects or peer leadership's role in our community?
I have a question. How many peer leaders are there?
We have like over 30.
Yeah.
There's five groups and probably like
Yeah, we have over 6 to 8 people in them.
And did you choose, like the different groups, priorities, like you guys are going to the Humane Society, you guys are going to sorry.
We had some say into it. It was mostly like we wrote down what like on our application, we wrote down like some things that we want to do for during peer leadership. Like I wrote down a couple things like the senior center that I thought that'd be really cool to go to. I wrote down just other things. And based on that, the two, Miss Brassford and Miss Amblo, they're like our peer leader, like they're like the runners, I guess. And they like read our application and they kind of like put like had three, like a couple groups.
Yeah.
And then based on that, we like filled out a survey and they filled out the survey and then they put us in the groups with like the information that they got from our application and from our survey.
How often do you meet? And also how often do you meet and how you make decisions about what activities you want to move forward with? How do you make those decisions?
We meet every Friday in the morning from 8 to 8:30. And we just kind of like compromise with our group and talk about ideas. Most of the ideas happened at the beginning of peer leadership, closer to the beginning of the year, where we brainstormed all of the things that we wanted to do and then we narrowed it down to like one or two things. And some of the projects are smaller so that you can do more, and then some like the Humane Society or the Senior Citizen like Center take longer, so those would probably be it for this year.
I think I noticed that everybody's a 7th or 8th grader, and I was curious about, but some of you have been on for 2 years, so what's the process for a 6th grader to join? And is there a way to like get people who don't really know about it and are new to the school to know what the opportunity is?
We do peer leadership. We do like it's kind of like not like a meet and greet, but like we basically like we are kind of like we help the 6th graders and like 6th grade families like tour the school. We help them with their lockers and we like inform them. I like at least what I did is I kind of told them like I'm part of peer leadership, which is like a club in our school, and that kind of like and we also have like daily announcements. And the peer leadership doesn't start like right as the school year starts. It's kind of like a couple weeks into it, and like on the announcements, which everyone like every TA reads in the morning, and that has like peer leadership will be starting this year. It kind of does like a brief overview of like what it does, and like kind of has like some projects that we did last year. But
We do have some 6th graders, they just can.
Yeah.
And do you guys know about the student reps on the school board?
Yeah, we went to one there meeting. Cool. Awesome.
Were either of you peer leaders when you were at that?
When I was in middle school, I think it was just starting up, and I think I was there in 8th grade.
Yeah, I think my group, we did the backpacks for Ukraine when I was in peer leadership. So.
Oh, you were on for a few years.
Yeah.
So would any of you like to be student representatives on the school board in a few years?
Very good.
This is the training place for this. I do want to acknowledge the dedication of our two peer leader advisor teachers at our school, Carly Bressord, who's our technology education teacher, and Yvette Amblo, who is one of our counselors. They alluded to it, but we know some really important things they do are welcoming of our 5th grade class into 6th grade. Not only at our 5th grade parent night, our peer leaders will be back on the ground helping with one of the big stressful transitions to middle school, is how to get your locker to open, and our peer leaders cover 200 students learning how to open their lockers and come for our orientation activities at the beginning of the school year as well. If you guys are good, we'll transition to, we talked a little bit about what an ends policy is, what a school board's role in an ends policy is, and give a little bit of time as middle schoolers to think about what skills and courses and opportunities they would want from the South Burlington School District before they graduate high school.
And if I could step, so we're perfectly on time. And so I think that at this point, we should transition to the community forum with the students involved. And what that does is it lets the board, go back and forth with anybody. So
You could stay right there.
absolutely, stay right here. And to give a little bit of context, 10 years ago, the school board wrote down our ends, which are kind of like our goals or our priorities. And I think actually one of the public commenters read from that a little bit earlier today. And so it's basically like, what are schools supposed to do for the community and specifically for the kids, for you guys? So I would love to hear what you want from the schools and what you thought about. So, but take it away.
I know that one really valuable skill I've learned in peer leadership is how to talk to adults and writing emails and making phone calls. And I feel like for a lot of kids my age, and even me, that's like just struggle and I don't really know what to say and I kind of blank. But with peer leadership, we've had, difficulty reaching out to this senior home. We've had to be persistent with our communication to them. We've had to write some really thoughtful emails and make a lot of phone calls. And I think that's such a valuable skill to be able to talk to adults and be able to make your points clear. I think it'd be great if everybody got to learn it.
Great start.
Something I think is a lot of times when you're learning things, I think like, why am I learning this? Like, I don't feel like I'll use this in the real world. So I feel like it would be interesting to know when will I actually use this? Like, why are we learning this? And kind of like get a sense of like what it will be like after school. I'm also like I'm only in 7th grade, so probably more in like high school, but like more real world situation.
Yeah, kind of what Eloise said there, maybe more about the news and what's actually going on in the world, because like sometimes adults are just like, they'll be like, you might see something on the news and you're like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And then like the adults might say like, oh, it's nothing to worry about. And yeah, we are
to like protect us from it, but like,
yeah,
wanna
but
know what's
yeah, we like I feel like we should have the right to know what's going on in the world and to kind of prepare ourselves from when we are adults and after we've graduated and to realize like how we can be good people and make a good impact to the world.
For me, something that I would like to know, like when I'm starting to like go into the real world, is how to problem solve and how to learn from my mistakes. Because I think that that's really important when you're just learning, like when you're just starting off in school. I think it's important to know how to fix your mistakes, know how to learn from your mistakes so you can do better next time.
And I feel like learn from your mistakes is kind of like a not like a quote. Like I don't like growing up, I didn't really know what that meant. Like learning from your mistakes, and like I'm kind of like starting just to learn about what it kind of means and like mistakes. Like I didn't know like what that meant and how to like quote unquote like learn from your mistakes. And so I think that like going into that like not only like the like learning from your mistakes stuff like that, but like also like it's just like that. It's like kind of just like learning about what it means and like how it affects you.
I would want to know like one thing I've learned from peer sorry. One thing I've learned from peer leadership is how to like collaborate with peers that you like don't know or people that you haven't talked to before. And kind of what Gracie said, like communicating with adults that are outside of our schools or in our schools even.
One thing that I found really useful and from peer leadership is kind of like being able to like talk with others. Like you get these like communication skills and it's like easier for you to like come up here and like talk to all of you guys and like public speaking. And so for others, it's like a lot harder. And for me, it was a lot harder. But now I really have like the gist of it. And then I feel like doing all of this like helps a lot of people like be able to come up and like talk to all of you guys.
Like I think it'd be fun to learn like more about like business classes so we can like improve like our skills on like finance and like budgeting and stuff in the future.
Yeah, that's a great question. Like, do you have the classes in your school that you want to take, or are there classes that you wish you had?
There are classes that we wish that we had, like for me at least, like I really wanted to get into like photography and like, in like the real world, I know that like take. So. In middle school, there's not many opportunities for electives, like there's been for us. And then you can choose a language, but that's like pretty much the extent of it. So I feel like if there was time for more like, I don't know, it would probably have to be like a club, but like if it was in less like a club and more like a class. Because I don't think there is time in this during the school day, but like sort of like that, because we don't really have opportunities to like take classes. Like the book classes. I agree with Eloise. I think that it's more of like a high school thing, but I think that like we should make it more of like a middle school thing, because I think that the thing that most teachers have trouble with is getting kids ready for the future, getting kids ready for like what's in high school, you know, like because right now this might just be me that's bothered by this, but we're using like 1, 2, 3, 4 as a grading scale, and I'm fine with that. But I think that it might be more easier and more relevant now to this time if we use like maybe percentages or something. And some of the teachers have been switching over to percentages, at least on my team. Like my ELA teacher and my math teacher have started using percentages, and I feel like that is a lot more informative than just 1, 2, 3, 4, because it tells me like what exactly I got wrong, what exactly I can work on, or what I might need to redo. Definitely like getting us prepped for high school, because I know some teachers use percentages and some teachers use like A's, B's, like B minuses.
I think there's like a lot of like, you can like, there's a lot of like, I feel like there's I don't know how to say it, but like using the 1, 2, 3, 4 like grading scale, I think that if we had more like the percentages or like letter grades, I think it would allow for us to like be more specific on what we need to like improve on, and kind of give us more variety for like what we do, because it doesn't like with 1, 2, 3, 4, it doesn't allow us to kind of like, you can kind of get one grade and there's a lot that falls in those grade lines. So I think that like a bit different grades would allow us to like, you know, I think it would improve us like working harder on what we work for. Because I think like you can get a higher grade with more grades.
And I have another,
Oh, just a clarification question, the 1, 2, 3, 4, do those have definitions, are those like?
Yes,
Beginning,
sort of.
approaching, advanced,
And it's
proficient,
like,
advanced?
Emerging, 2 is developing, 3 is proficient, and 4 is experienced. So 4 is like what above what they want.
It's like an extra, it's like an.
Yeah,
it's
like extra credit.
You also never know like what the 4 is going to be in like high school, so that's kind of the trouble with using the numbers.
Right, they're different steps.
Yeah.
And for a lot of classes, like a 3 can be like a 75% to a 99. And it's like you see a 3 and you think, okay, I'm good, but then, I mean, I haven't been out in the real world, but I'm guessing like a 75% isn't really be okay. Like I feel like if we had a different sort of scale, it'd be better.
so I had a question. If you think about the kids who don't join leadership council, and maybe who are not thinking about like grades as much, like what do you think they need to like school more and want to be there?
I feel like a lot of the time, like when we go to school, like I feel like teachers are talking at us instead of talking of like, instead of like explaining, and like I kind of like sometimes like don't like going to classes because I feel like the teacher is just like talking at us instead of like explaining it, like hands-on stuff. Like some teachers do that. But I think it's important for like, at least for me, like growing up, I think it's important to not only like to know why that teachers do this, like instead of like to know why the teachers are trying to like help us, or not only help us, but like how to make it easier for us to understand, and how to like make it more fun and engaging, and also bring back to like the teachers talking at us kind of stuff, but like and like has not like as like fun, I guess. And like same with like tests. Like I like dread tests. Like I really like get like in my head about tests and anxiety and stuff like that. And I feel like
if there's like. Like for the state testing and just like we do like star testing now. And I feel like that those tests are like I can get in my head a little bit, like I said. And I think those tests don't really show how you do in school. Like I feel like I like doing good in school and I like to like prove myself like that I'm doing good. And I think that like we have an SLE, which is like a student learning, I don't know if other ones use expectation. And that's kind of like how you do overall in like in that class. But I think it's important to also look at how you do outside of like the big tests and how you do outside of like the big summatives, outside of like the big summatives and just like outside of those. I think it's important.
I love like the testing. I know personally, I like more like projects more than tests because I feel like it shows what you know better. Because a test, like it's you could memorize it the night before and then forget it the next day. Whereas projects, it's more practicing and learning, and like I feel like it shows you what you know better.
And back to kind of what you were saying about like how can you make it better for like students or more. I don't what was the question again? Like
Well, I was wondering, for kids
Yeah.
who didn't join the leadership, maybe they don't think about grades as much, like, how can they like school more?
I feel like teachers have like tried, like I know like I can think of a couple people who like I know they could probably do better that they as like do better than they are like doing. But I think it's also like there's some incentives also that could like be played in there and there are incentives, but I feel like it shouldn't just be like it not there shouldn't be just incentives, but there should be some like there are some teachers that I know are really helpful to helping like other kids. But I don't know anything else.
I think that something that's probably like helped me engage more in classes is knowing that grades like don't define who I am and like other activities like sports and groups like peer leadership help me like know that like I'm not more than just like a number or a grade.
And I feel like if there was more ungraded work, it would like put less pressure on tests and summatives, but also like make school not just about grades, make school more about learning. And yeah.
I'm being encouraged to share a story that happened to me recently. So a couple days ago, I was sitting across from this guy in my class, and he wasn't doing any of the work, so I decided to ask him. I was like, "Why aren't?"
Can you slow down just a second?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. And he wasn't doing it, so I decided to ask him. I was like, "What's up? Like, why aren't you doing the work?" And he said, "Well, it's not like I'm going to college. It's not like I'm going to do well in high school. Why should I even try in middle school?" And it made me so upset because it's like, obviously, graduation is so far away, and like it is something you should think about, but it shouldn't be so stressful that like I'm not even gonna start in middle school. Like that someone felt like their path was already so predetermined at such a young age. And it's like I feel like kids just like think, I'm not getting fours, I'm not even getting threes. Like, why should I even try? I don't really know how the application of this would work out, but I just feel like a lot of kids in my grade feel so unprepared for high school that they feel like they shouldn't even try in middle school. And that's why things might not be going well in high school. So yeah, I feel like teachers like they try to they're saying a lot of the time like this is preparing for high school, like the amount of homework that we're giving you is for high school. But also it's like what Gracie was saying, that there should just kind of on Grace.
I think that maybe like giving kids more of like an idea of like what different career paths are. I think that could like kind of is like an incentive to like do better and try harder. Because I think that sometimes some of the work can kind of seem pointless because you can't really see like the benefits of it. So I think like I don't know, trying to include like this is something that would help you in these different career paths could like kind of push someone to like work harder. I agree with that. Like for example, I'm not the best at math. I've never really liked math. I know it's important and I still try,
But so that kind of just like makes me think like I don't really want to go into a career that has a lot of math involved. And some people like me for any class, like, if we were doing something and a teacher was like, especially if you want to go into like something in this thing, it would be good to focus on this, or like if you're good at this, you might want to consider this career.
And kind of what everyone said so far, maybe like people aren't trying as much, or don't really feel like they're enjoying school as much, like because of like pressurized tests and grades, and like feel like, so if I'm not good at this, like how am I gonna get this career, and like maybe sometimes over planning too much for the future. And so, yeah, I feel like swing back to what Eloise originally said about the projects, like we could like do more stuff that's about learning and like about creating stuff, rather than just like having like a standardized test and then like like kind of like, I know sometimes like when a test is coming up and I kind of like oh my gosh, like I gotta study, like if I don't do good, like it's going to be bad. So, and it's like very pressurized. So maybe we could like ease off the pressure a little bit, and yeah, like more creative and learning activities.
I kind of said this before, but like a lot of times I'll study really hard for a test and then I'll forget it all the next day. So that's why I do summatives, like projects with them.
I also think that like when teachers teach something, they're like really good at that certain thing, but when we're not good at one certain thing, then we are considered a bad student. And I just don't think that that's fair.
Like they're targeting us on one thing, or like they're teaching us broad the spectrum of things. And when we don't grasp that concept that they want us to grasp, like they punish us for it, but it's not really fair because some people like don't get it and some people do.
Like, for example, like I'm not the best at math, but I'm really good at ELA, then I'm just based off of that one bad grade that I got, then like I just think like really badly of myself. Like, what if I don't do well in the next test? What is my teacher gonna think of me then? Then like I don't think that it's fair if you just get based off of one grade that you got.
And I think kind of like going back, there has to be like a balance of both, like there, like someone said something earlier about having like tests, and like there shouldn't be as many tests, like not like that's not someone, as someone said, but like I think that going back to that, I think that there should still be work and there should still be projects and tests, but there needs to be a balance. And like what if someone's like, oh yeah, we're like learning this subject, but there's not gonna be a test. Oh well, like I probably know like a lot of the students at our school will be like, oh, then I don't have to try. So there has to be some sort of balance between like this is gonna impact your grade, but it shouldn't be as like straightforward, like it's gonna, like a lot of my teachers are really, really, really good at what they're doing. And just kind of going back, there should be a balance, and there should be not should, but there's like I think there should be some sort of like students.
Well, I can't imagine a better way to start our discussion of the ends that the school is trying to achieve. So, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I just really want to thank just how articulate our peer leadership group is coming here and sharing their thoughts about the authentic experience through school and highlighting their peer leadership activities. They're a really special part of our school and all of our clubs and activities, as well as what happens all during the school day is just a really important piece.
Yes,
So
thank you.
let me add my thank you. What you did here tonight not only really helps us think about this ends policy, but I want you to know that what you're doing is hard for all of the adults in the room too, and you came anyway. So thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, I know you sat here and you told us a lot of stuff, and I didn't want you to think we weren't taking it in. And I wanted to let you know from what I heard a lot about wanting to have hands-on learning, have agency and like a partnership and a balance with your teachers and like understanding how, what you're learning and how it's gonna work in the future and how it's gonna benefit you, and maybe pivoting to different types of learning that works better for the way you are as a student. So those are all really interesting things to think about adding to the ends. I really appreciate you guys coming.
I have the one last thing. This is gonna be quick, but I've been here since 6th grade, and we've been doing a lot of like the same things like a lot of the time. And I kind of like in the start, I was like, oh, this is really, really fun. Like I'm super excited. And like, but at the end of like kind of like throughout the year, I'm like, oh, we're kind of been doing this a lot. And I know it's like fun for like all the 6th graders and 7th graders, but like that, like the 8th graders, there should be a little bit more like not there's I shouldn't be saying should. There like could be some sort of like more activities and stuff like that. And like overall, like our school is a really, really good school. And we have a lot of like really good teachers and really good students and a lot of actual helpers for like students who also need extra help. So
I also wanted to say, I'm really impressed that you said something to your peer who was not working. And because you weren't calling him out, but you were actually interested in what he was doing. And maybe he thinks no one cares if he's doing his work or not doing his work. So that kind of an interaction is super important. And it also ties back to what you guys were talking about in the beginning about what it means to be a good person and what it means to be a person in the world growing up. And I think that's something that's really important for us to help shape good people who want to support each other, especially, you know, moving into the future and hoping that we can come to a place where people can have conversations that might be difficult or have different opinions on, but can still have conversations about it. So I'm really impressed.
I have there's so many different kinds of learners. Everybody learns so differently. And I feel like the school does a pretty good job of like accommodating everyone and making sure that everybody learns the best that like they can.
That's great, yeah. And going back to something that I think one of you said at the beginning about talking to adults and like the importance of like being able to talk to adults. Now I think the adults are gonna talk, and you're definitely welcome to stick around and listen to how I think some of the adults are gonna respond to some of your comments in their own comments. So thank you very much. Sure. So now we're still in the community forum, and at this point, we would welcome other public comments. I think maybe we can start with somebody online. Does that work? If you're online and you want to make a public comment for the for this discussion, would you raise your hand? I see a few people that are invited. Bob or Jason, Lauren, Mary, Tim, Elizabeth, anybody online? I think they may just be figuring out how to raise their hands. So maybe we'll take a comment from in the room, please. Okay.
I don't know if there's a Naomi online, but Megan Emery, resident of South Burlington. I have a ninth grader at the high school, I have 2 graduates. And I unfortunately wasn't able to get Naomi online when everyone was talking about Honors American Studies. She's also, just want to let you know, she's also very much disappointed that this class, and she's heard her brothers talk about it, class of 2017, class of 2018. And what she says is, I know its content is super interesting and really prepares us for all our high school years. And it's a favorite for people who are taking it. So I just wanted to pass this along. What I'd like to say in response to what I heard the middle schoolers say is that it is super young to be wanting to think about what career you're going to be doing when you are 11, 12, 13 years old. I know that my own daughter was very concerned about that. And as someone who's a university professor, I don't know if they're still here, I have always reassured her, you have time. You have time. And also something to embrace when you're in the middle school is that your mind is completely developing new circuitry. And so we all develop at different speeds and at different times in our lives. There's a blossoming, right? And if you feel like you're somehow lagging, no, your blossoming is coming. And I just want to take that pressure off of all of these young people. We all get there. And there are tests along the way, and sometimes we do well and sometimes we do less well. But we know that, right, this is something that is preparing us in one way or another for what's ahead, whether that be, you know, university study, whether that be going directly into the workforce, whether that be doing something service related, you know, here or somewhere else. There's so many options in life. So I just wanted to say that because my heart was just kind of hurting for all of them people talking about not knowing what they want to do for career yet when they're 12 and 13 years old. And I didn't know what I wanted to do yet when I was 12 and 13 years old. So what I wanted to say was what I also heard them say and what my daughter has been texting me about is word about engagement. Wanting to have classes that actually engage the students, having connection with the teachers. Something that I heard in the discussion prior when there was discussion about American Studies is the desire to be more challenged in classes. So there is a real concern in my household about how the high school has changed over the past decade. And the loss of honors is something to do with it. I think also it's more difficult to kind of take those classes that you are really interested in and that really push you. I understand that there's a big push for equity right now, having talked to administrators that are in equity. I am fully on board. But I am concerned to see the level of frustration and not being challenged. So I just wanted to put a word in there about that. And I am 100% on board with public education. I know that the school system is teaching everyone, and that's what I want it to be, and I want us all to live in society. And that's also what my daughter said, that group activities, having those discussions, having that interaction in class with people who are different from you, that those are really, really key learning experiences. So I just wanted to add that as well. And I'll probably hear all kinds of wonderful things. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
And maybe I should take it, go ahead, take it to a higher level for a minute, just to remind us why we're all here again. So we are a policy governance board. What that means is that we have a document that's almost like a constitution for the school district that says like what the goals of the school district is. And so when the middle schoolers came in and told us about, you know, their concerns, their hopes, what they want to see at the schools, that's part of a broader conversation we're having this year with the goal of updating our priorities document, our ends document in September, after a whole process of community input, like everybody showed up to give today. So, at least personally, what I was hearing from the students was a wide spectrum of everything, and from the public comment earlier, was a wide spectrum from concerns about academics to concerns about, you know, well, what if you're not so much into academics, and how can the, you know, how can the school system really work for you in both ways? So that's the question for all of you here at our community forum: is how can we both, you know, improve academic rigor and also make sure that academics isn't the only way to succeed at our school district. So is there anybody else in the audience who would like to give any comment?
So hand was Tim Jarvis.
Tim, could you recognize Tim? Go ahead,
Hi,
Tim.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. I just wanted to chip in some personal comments about the Honors American discussion, which was really prompted not only by the conversation that we had earlier in the program, but also with the students, peer leaders, and recognizing that taking away the opportunity for these outstanding middle schoolers to take a course that is of such high reputation, high student popularity, is really a shame. And I think it needs to be reconsidered. I remember very well a couple of years ago when this topic was raised at the board meetings and the parade of parents and students who were very disappointed that it was being contemplated to be cut. Fortunately, it was not, because I have a daughter who is taking the course right now as a sophomore. And before the school year started, I made a commitment to my daughter that I would essentially audit the course myself. So Mr. Lewis was nice enough to give me the American Pageant textbook, which is, I think, of certainly college level reading, and challenging beyond most textbooks, I'm sure, that are used in other courses at the high school. I have been diligently following the syllabus throughout the course of the year. I've done all the assigned reading. I have also been doing all of the reading on the American literature side of the course, because those of you who may not be familiar with the course, it's really an English course and a history course. And Mr. Lewis and Mr. McFadden do an incredible job of connecting the dots between what American literature was at various points in our history with the actual history lessons, and further connecting the dots to what's happening today. It is something that I have found challenging and very enjoyable. And my daughter reminds me, as the weekend is approaching, where I might be falling behind in some of the reading. So I do my best to catch up, but I am caught up. It's an outstanding course, and I feel like I'm kind of in the weeds of it because I'm essentially auditing the course myself. When I went to parent-teacher conferences, Mr. Lewis asked me if I intended to take any of the exams, and I politely declined, saying that I already had my master's degree and I wasn't going to be doing any more exams. But the course is outstanding, and just to think of the direction that we would be taking by eliminating what has been spoken about for years as the best course at the high school is very disappointing. You know, when I picked up my daughter last week from school and they told me about this, they were distraught. I mean, they only have another month and a half left of school, and it's wrapping up, but they felt compelled to immediately write to Mr. Burke to express their disappointment about this and to try to understand what was the rationale behind the cancellation of the course and whatnot. And it's really for, so my daughter is virtually done, but it's the freshmen who won't be able to take it next year. It's the 8th graders that won't be able to take it in 2 years' time. And I just wanted to voice my great disappointment that this decision is being contemplated. I don't think it's consistent with what we're trying to do with academic rigor, as many people have already said tonight. So thank you for allowing me to express my comments.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other comment from the room, please?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Ben Heath, and I'm here tonight to bring up the subject of tech schools and bringing tech into the school program. I currently serve on the advisory board for 3 tech schools in the state, Middlebury, Essex, and St. Albans, and I also work with a number of other schools like Enosburg and Barron to provide them with. I work for a construction and engineering company, and we go and do presentations on not only to advocate to them for the company that we work for to try to get some employees, but also to help them understand some of the options that are out there for them once school's done. And when I went to high school, what I understood was that if I could either go to college or I could work for minimum wage the rest of my life. And that might not have been true at the time, but it's definitely less true now than it was then. And so one of the things that we've been finding is that there's this society has a real need for people with tech skills, plumbers, heating specialists, automotive specialists, carpenters, people know how to run equipment, people know how to fix things. And the number of people in society that can do that has gone way down, and the need for it has gone way up. And I'm working with a number of schools, and these schools are, what they're finding is that there is a huge surge and spike in the number of students that want to get into the tech fields, but the opportunities at these schools are sometimes isn't there. Some of these schools have massive waiting lists, and there are a number of students who really have a desire to get into a tech program at the high school level, and then they can't, or maybe they have to go to a neighboring school if that school will accept them. And there's all kinds of problems with that, with where the money comes from and how the school deals with that. And so what I would suggest to this board is that they consider bringing a robust tech program to this school. We have an opportunity here to take what's happening in society and what's happening with students and bring the two together to provide not only opportunity for the students, but to give society what it desperately needs, which is more people who can do this work. The other, I'm not going to advocate against going to college. I have two bachelor's degrees with minors, and I'm very fortunate that I got to do that, and I wouldn't take it back. But in today's world, you're going to end up in a, $1, $2, $3, $400,000 worth of debt. And if you go into even a mildly lucrative program, then maybe it's worth doing that. But if you don't, and you don't go into a very specific field that has a good end game, you could end up with some debt that's insurmountable, and you end up paying this for the rest of your life. You go to tech school in high school and you graduate, you go work for somebody who's in tech, like maybe it's an automotive shop, or maybe it's a construction company, or maybe they build homes. It's not unusual for these people right out of high school within a couple of years to be making upwards into $100,000 a year. And the opportunity is there for that. And I think the school should be taking full advantage of that and providing that as a service to students in the community. And inevitably providing that as a service to the people in the community who need people to be able to do this work.
The beauty of this is it's a forum, so we just ask questions.
Sure.
I do have a question. So, I do think that our system is heavily geared towards college prep. My question is in providing opportunities to go along a tech path, whether that eventually goes to 4-year schooling or beyond. What are, in probably a very general sense, you should think about this because I know it's probably different for different fields, but thinking about the foundational academics, there must be, right, a certain level of academic skills that are necessary for any tech program. And I'm kind of curious about that, right? Like we have, I think, probably a better sense of what those skills are like for going into college, those of us who've been there. But maybe not as good a sense about what strengths are required to go into tech programs generally. Again, acknowledging I know you can't answer for every single tech program.
Yeah, before I answer that question, I think what I would say is I would turn it around the exact opposite. How much tech schooling or tech information do you need to be successful in life? Should you be able to fix your own, should you be able to replace the battery in your car, do some basic mechanical things? Should you be able to, tighten a screw or a nut on a faucet if it's leaking? Those are some basic things that people should know how to do if they want to be successful in their own life. And so I would turn it around and say, well, shouldn't that be part of the discussion already? And it doesn't sound like it really is. But to answer your question specifically, I think the ability to be able to do format and to have reading comprehension and some writing skills is obviously paramount to them being successful no matter what they do. And the better they are at those things, the more advancement opportunity there probably is to get in some kind of leadership position within the field. But that doesn't mean that you can be deficient in those things and still not provide yourself with a very good income right out of high school.
Maybe this would be a good time. So I know online we've got the directors of both the Essex and also the Burlington Tech Centers. So Bob Travers and Jason Reed. Would you recognize Bob? And then Jason, if you want to say anything, to add to this discussion that Ben brought up. Okay, great. Yeah. So would you enable both of them to speak and then we can keep the discussion going? So Bob, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, hi, my name is Bob Travers. I'm the director for Center for Technology Essex. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. I think it's an important conversation, and what I'm hearing is typical of what I've heard for decades. I've been in career and technical education for 35 years. I've done it at the post-secondary level and at the secondary level. I've been at Essex for 22 years. So I think you can imagine I'm pretty committed to the idea. What I want to say is the conversation is really about how does career and technical education, it sounds like, how does it fit into the broader mission and vision of any high school? And it sounds like South Burlington with their ends policy is really starting to try to question that.
And if you could interrupt you, in the whole district, not only the high school, but maybe also the middle school.
Well, I think that's an important element of it. But as one of your speakers noted earlier, is it a good thing for a seventh and eighth grader to be worried about what their career might be at this particular point in time? I would say I wouldn't want them to spend a lot of energy on it, but I would want them to be aware of what the purpose of education is. I think we're getting into this concept of what is the purpose of a high school degree versus what is the purpose of experience at a career and tech ed center. To speak to the question of one of your board members about what are the base skills, academic skills that any career and tech ed student needs, what I tell all of our applicants and all of our students is my job is to make sure that I keep doors open for you for your future. I don't think there are many of us in this meeting today who studied for a particular degree which led to a particular career and remained in that career for entire lives. I think the common experience is that people have 2 or 3 careers over their lifetime. So what I encourage high school students to understand is that career and tech ed makes no sense at all unless they're going to graduate from high school. And so our jobs, Jason's and mine, are to make sure our programming prepares students for career and post-secondary readiness upon completion from high school. We are part of that pathway for students. We have up to 13 different sending high schools that are represented at our center this year. And one of my jobs, along with my staff, is to make sure that those seniors graduate from their high school, meet their high school graduation requirements, and leave with certifications that prepare them for the industry. Ben, it's really nice to see you. I appreciate that you're sitting in on this conversation. I agree with you that it feels like we're at a tipping point right now. 12 years ago, I used to have conversations with Pat Burke about the cost of career and tech ed and how we can keep it down. And now I'm having conversations with Pat and a number of other high school principals about how can we get tech more available to all of our students. I really appreciate the conversation. I'm fully engaged in the process. Jason and I meet regularly. We talk about how we can improve access for students. But it's tricky business right now. How can we co-locate a career and tech ed program at a high school while meeting the requirements of the federal government that funds our Perkins grants and the AOE, which verifies the size, scope, and quality of our programs so that we are in compliance with their expectations.
Jason, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that discussion?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Pardon me if I'm off cadence here. It's challenging talking to a black screen with just my name on it with no audience feedback. But just for the audience and for the record, my name is Jason Reed. I'm a 20-year employee of the Burlington School District, 4 years at Burlington Tech Center, and started my career in career and tech education, had 2 different positions, went into the humanities in the high school and found my way back to career and technical education. So I echo a little bit of what Bob said, that I am committed to it and I believe in it. And what I often preface a lot of conversations with is we are part of a well-rounded pre-K through 12 education. With that said, we have the unique ability to partner with schools like South Burlington. South Burlington's been a long time partner with Burlington Tech Center to help students major, if you will. If you want to think about a college parallel, and I know the conversation is trying to steer away from college, But really, today's career in tech ed, as Bob said, as it's governed by federal legislation, the Vermont's AOE's plan to meet that federal legislation, we have multiple pathways. We have dual enrollment college built into our programs for students who see themselves as college bound. We also get students who say, I'm not college bound. They take dual enrollment with us, and all of a sudden they're college bound. We also have students who thought they were college prep who discover that they can go into the workforce and, as Mr. Heath said, work their way up with the foundational skills they have. So it's really a multiple pronged pathway. And what I would just caution the group about, both the community and the board, is not to think of it as an either or. Right. I think that career in tech ed has multiple pathways. I think part of the either or has stigmatized it and has prevented a lot of students from thinking it is for them. On the other hand, I think we have to do a better job of reaching the students. One of your students talked about the young man who had already been defeated in middle school. We have to do a better job of reaching those students and finding ways that do engage them, that do excite them. Your question, Chair, was great about how do we kind of stimulate that at the younger grades. We live in an exciting area. You have 2 regional tech centers. We have an international airport. We have a new electric aircraft company. We have building trades companies that are doing all kinds of impressive work. We build world-class rally cars in this region. There's a lot for young people to experience. And I think exposing them to those things so that they can maybe discover an interest, maybe discover a strength they didn't know they had. But what I will say to Commissioner Boyer's question is to access these things, to make yourself recession-proof, to make yourself have opportunities. There is a level of academic skill that needs to go along with that. The systems that folks are working with today are complex. They're computerized. Cars are evolving. You need to be able to go to training programs. If car comes out with a new type of motor, CNC machining has reached into not just metal fabrication, wood fabrication, all kinds of things. So students do need to have those skills. And we also need to provide students with skills to work in a multi-generational workforce as well. I think those skills serve students in college, they serve students in the workplace. So it's a real effort, I think, between CTE centers and our sending districts to provide students with these opportunities. So I'm kind of rambling here. I get excited about the topic, so I'll pause to see if there's questions or if you have some other specific questions.
I have a question, and it's probably for Bob, but either or. I'll start it with a statement. South Burlington is one of the biggest municipalities in the state. And this municipality should have its own tech program. Now, some schools choose, I don't know why, maybe they believe they don't have enough people that will be engaged in it, but they make the decision to, if there are students that want to be in this tech program, to send them to another established program. And I guess my question would be, so we'll start with Bob, as to if you can explain to the board what some of the challenges are with that and why maybe, I know I don't believe that would be the best approach for South Burlington, but what are your thoughts on a municipality of this size choosing to go to another program in another municipality as opposed to building their own?
Yeah, so I think that's a good question, Ben. The state decided in 1972, I believe, to take a regional tech center approach, whereby they were able to co-locate tech centers at high schools and really kind of concentrate the investment in career and tech ed. Hundreds of millions of dollars have been invested in career and tech ed over these decades, where we are able to serve students from within our region in their interests and really leverage the value of the investment, leverage the money it takes to buy the equipment, to train the staff, to have the facilities. There are a lot of states that have different delivery models from us. I would encourage South Burlington to, I guess I want to ask a question about your question, Ben. Is your question, why would I convince South Burlington not to go seek partnership in another tech center within the state?
That's one way to characterize it, or another way to characterize it is, why wouldn't a municipality of this size? What are some of the reasons why it would be important for a program like this to be successful for the community? For a municipality of this size to build it within their own program as opposed to sending the students to a different.
Gotcha. Yep. I understand that question now.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that really goes to the idea of philosophy for me. What is the purpose of a high school, and how do you serve the multiple interests? There is no function right now within the state for Burlington to build a tech center without meeting all of the requirements of a tech center. So I think I would much rather, in the short term, explore ways in which the existing structures can expand rather than build other structures. There's no matching funds for buildings in the state anymore. Anything that's built, I know South Burlington knows as well, has to go to bond vote. The cost of facilities are enormous. And any approved tech center right now, following current legislation, has to meet regional requirements. In other words, it has to serve the students that are within the region that is defined by state board rule. So in our region, it's all of the Chittenden County high schools plus BFA Fairfax. So a lot of things would have to change in order for any high school to try to meet the current rules of definitions of career and tech ed. But I understand the interest in it. The costs that are really challenges, or the questions that are really challenges for any career and tech ed center or any high school that wants to offer career and tech ed like programming, is finding qualified instructors of a pathway who also hold a teacher's license and a CTE endorsement. So it's tricky. Jason?
Yeah, I mean, Bob was really thorough with that. I don't have a lot to offer there. But I think, yeah, part of it is really understanding what the requirements are for career and tech ed now, to really understand what building and providing those programs would be. That's not to say that schools can create electives, they can create classes that may introduce students to the skills, that may have similar processes, project-based, maybe even work-based learning components, which can be really effective in career and tech ed. There's some legalities around work-based learning and safety requirements around those things, but there is a little freedom there. But I think Bob did a nice job of talking about some of the constraints in Vermont right now. And if you follow the news at all, in Burlington High School and Burlington Tech Center back in 2020, it was Burlington on its own, essentially, to determine how to rebuild a tech center. There was no external support from that outside of the Burlington community.
Say one thing for the middle school in tech education. I want to thank Center for Technology Aspects at Burlington Technical Center. They are partnering with our school counseling program at the middle school. And over the next 2 weeks, they are coming for 4 workshops so that almost 200 of our 8th graders can experience and have some hands-on learning and reflective activities to learn about different careers and fields that they could access through technology education.
Sure. I also want to give a chance to people who have other topics of concern to give a talk. So thank you very much, Ben, Bob, Jason. Thank you very much for your comments.
Yeah, Chair, what I would just add in closing is, we had some limited time tonight and an online format. I'm available for follow-ups. South Burlington's been a good partner, and I'm happy to partner with you on anything that can be helpful, within the scope of my work. So we can continue this conversation as needed.
Yes, and my understanding is that you're in close contact with our superintendent, so I thank you for that, for those efforts.
Yeah, it's just a chain of command thing that we follow in Burlington between school boards and principals and so on. And so, whatever we're comfortable with and can agree upon, happy to work through that chain of command.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add very quickly to Ben's question. I have already gotten on the books with the South Burlington superintendent and principal ongoing conversation about how to bring a specific current tech ed program to South Burlington. And we have agreed to include seed money in our Perkins funds to try to make that happen over the next 1.5 or 2 years. So we'll continue to work with South Burlington as well.
Thanks very much. Yeah. Please go ahead, comment in the room.
I just wanted to comment about our conversation on trying to engage students who are maybe not as academic and thinking us more outside the box. We're trying to get them engaged before they're even thinking about necessarily careers. How do you get them interested in a career? Because I think some people have been talking about, well, you don't really want them necessarily to think about careers in middle school. That's maybe not the right approach. How do we get children engaged, right? How do we get them passionate? Let's not just think about, I think, when you're losing funding, right, you have to cut all these extra things. But that can be a mistake because those other things are what keep those kids engaged and what keeps them interested in coming to school. And, the arts and maybe the STEM class and things like that, those are what can be the hook to get them engaged. And maybe that's going to lead them to that career that keeps them engaged. So I'm just going to throw some outside the box thinking here. One thing that if I could take my magic mark with a pen and read create the wheel for school, what I would love to do is change our schedule so that we, instead of having this early release, late start thing, we did what other school districts do and have that hour early release on one day a week. Because what that allows other schools to do is they have all these community partners that have programs going on that day, and then buses can drop kids off to those programs. So it allows first of all, it makes it a lot easier for parents because they don't, because of childcare. So there's a lot more going on in the community for parents for their kids to go to, but just opens up opportunities for children to try new things in the community. And the other thing is the communities partner with their local rec department. And then there's a coordinated after school program at a discounted cost that children can try. And there's so many things they can try just for 6-week periods. So there's a robotics class, there's a Legos program, there's all these things. After school through the rec department on those, every day of the week, but also on that short day that is that's after school. So your kid doesn't not necessarily is in the after school program, but they can do through the rec department on that early release day, they can try something. So, and we're one of the only towns that doesn't have that. And I know that you might think this is, I actually think it's actually an equity issue because it really does allow people who don't have as much money to try through the rec department. These are much at a discounted cost, all these programs. And they can try it could be a writing thing. It could be, like I said, archery or tennis or pickleball. The kids at a young age get to experience a wide range of things. And who knows, maybe it could be caring for animals. The rec departments can offer tons of things. But then I have a child who has a learning disability. I had to think about letting her try to experience a lot of things because maybe that's going to be something that she becomes passionate about. And then later that's something that who's in high school, develops, and that's what she goes to tech school for. But, so it isn't like, but when we, because it's really hard to get her into an after school program, because she does a lot of tutoring. But if she had something, if there was a program like that she could do for the rec department, it would give her a chance to develop something that could become her passion. And so anyways, and the other thing is because of our school buses, and it's a lot of kids are into sports, and our transportation is gotten better, I'll say, but it's also makes it very hard for kids who don't have a parent provide transportation to engage in sports, because the sports schedules are, I don't know if you know this, but if your kid is on a sports team, the practices are all over the place. So if you don't have someone who can bring your kid back to school for their sports practice, you really can't participate in sports. So if there's any way to like help fix that so that all kids can participate in sports. These are things that you think aren't related to academics, but they really keep kids engaged, and they would help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That makes me think of like A block at the high school that we had for a while, and how like making sure we're designating time in school for kids.
Yeah, they
who
moved A block
are-
and changed it. Small things like that make a big difference.
Yeah.
The kids who don't have the access to a parent who can drive them.
Yeah, so like accessibility, and I think, like when I think about this year at school, with not that A block is the end all be all. But the idea of like, that's a chance for kids to go out into the community and find things they're interested in, like, I was doing some research before this, and Burlington has a like Burlington City and Lake semester program, and they like go out into the city and they spend that class period like with adults in the community learning about Burlington. So like, I think things like that within the school.
Here's one more thing, like other towns have their clubs within the school day. So then kids want to be in the club, it's not like a challenge to be in a club, it works, yeah.
Is there any other comment in the room?
Yeah, are you moving on to the next?
No, please. We'll just, while we're here.
Yeah. So, I was having a little trouble, understanding the specific question we were asked as as members of the community, because it was sort of vague, what do you think we should do? Which is a lot of, there are a lot of categories of things there, so I'll just start with that. But I just wanted to, give feedback on the proficiency grading system, because we heard a lot about that from the students who were in the room. I've gotten feedback from my high school student. I've got one in college now who went through South Burlington schools, and another who's now in high school, who also thought that was really hard to grapple with. It was kind of hard to understand, exactly where they stood on that scale. And just to give my personal feedback as an educator of adults in a highly educated adults, I've had to use a proficiency evaluation system, and I find it very difficult to avoid a large degree of subjectivity in my evaluations. And I'm throwing that out there because I don't know if that's something that educators in South Burlington struggle with, but to use that sort of grading system, I find it very, very difficult not to sort of veer into my own personal biases about that particular student. So I just wanted to throw that out there since someone mentioned it. And another thing along the same lines, and again, I'm not really sure if this is one of the areas that you were asking about, but the grading rubrics that are used, where you're kind of like going down the checklist and then you get 2 points for this and 3 points for that and 5 points for this. There was a discussion about this in a lecture I attended over at UVM just last week, in fact, and one of the professors who was speaking mentioned that she thought it might be time to start moving away from that, because it gives the students kind of this false impression that and I've seen this among the, now several generations of students who I have taught in my profession, adult students who, are in a postgraduate setting. I've seen an evolution where they're not really able to think on their feet as well, because they're used to being told, check this box, check this box, check this box, check this box, and you're gonna do great. Because life doesn't work that way, professional life doesn't work that way, I'm sure the tech fields don't work that way, you know, you're not gonna have somebody there dictating to you the steps that you go through to get from A to B. So just throwing that out there, I don't know if this is the forum where we make those types of observations and suggestions. I'm just putting that out there as a you know, something that I see this young man nodding. So and then I have one more thought. And this one is of particular interest to me because I have two kids who were never interested in sports. They're very artistic, they're very creative, they like to write, they like to draw. But what that means is that they don't have the opportunity to be in a situation where they're, you know, finding reasons not to be on their devices and their computers and in their rooms by themselves. And in all the years that my kids have been in the school system here and in our previous, you know, where we used to live, we've been here since 2019. So, you know, they were both in school for quite a while before we got here. It always seemed that there was this very big emphasis on sports, and the kids who were doing sports had lots of stuff to do after school. And the other kids were sort of like spinning in the wind, you know, I mean, they were, you know, the writing club would sort of fall apart in no time. And then this club, you know, the art club would have like 3 students who would kind of fall apart over time. So I don't know what the solution to that is. I'm just putting that out there because I don't know what percentage of kids don't participate in sports and don't participate in another type of extracurricular activity. And it seems to me that there's an opportunity there to explore what the reasons might be that those other types of extracurriculars don't attract lots and lots of students the way that the sports do. Anyway, those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any other comment in the room? All right, well, thanks to the community for bringing your perspectives. Is there any other board comment on what we heard today?
This is Anne for for organizing the students.
Yeah,
They were super
that was awesome.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, well, the next item on the agenda is a few action items, but maybe we'll just take a 2-minute break. So reset here a little bit. Everybody's looking at me like they don't want to take a break.
Yeah.
2 minutes. All right, we'll be back at 7:39.
We should have the last. People I
started out
that.
We did.
But you know, I'm not
Okay.
Thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is authorized radio ads for ends policy update. So, the ends policy committee has been working on organizing the ends policy update. We have a new website for it that we can direct web traffic to. The website has a form where people can RSVP to both focus groups and to community forums. It's kind of a commitment to come and be reminded of it. We also have signed a contract with the consultant to help us with the ends policy update this year. So I would say that operationally, we're moving forward. Any other comments from Melissa and Michelle on their committee?
I think there's really great progress in the setup, and now it'll be really the rubber hits the road. We've had now our second forum. It was wonderful to see so many people come and share their thoughts with them more. But yeah, next step, I think, really is to start getting some invitations out for those focus groups and get them on the calendar, and then send the invitations out.
Yeah. Melissa, do you have any thoughts?
No.
So on that note, we have to recruit for focus groups. And also, I think, as you can see, it's a lot of work to get people to these meetings. And so in that vein, the ends committee is proposing that we spend money to get people out here. And so the proposal that's in the board materials for this week, I'll bring it up on my screen here. So the proposal is to spend about $5,000 on radio ads over the next 2 months to maximize participation in the early part of our ends policy update. I hope that if we spend the money now, that will also make sure that people show up in July, August, September, when we have more community forums, when people are actually going to have a chance to respond to the changes that we are proposing. So I believe that this is a wise investment in getting people engaged with the schools. I think it'll probably help get the public informed about why they should support the schools during the budgeting season. So this is the proposal that we have. We talked to a couple different radio networks, Paul and also Vox. And so these are everything from an AM station to Pool 105, which is what my family listens to. And here are all the details, but the big picture is that we'd like to spend a couple $1,000s bringing people out to these and trying to drive participation.
So I have some comments. I do think you identify a real problem. I think that the school board hears disproportionately from people who have children in the schools. And I think that, and from people who are highly engaged. And I do think that it's important to have broader community input. But I think that with us operating in a visibly financially constrained environment, I don't feel that $5,100 is a very good use of resources. And there's a couple of things. I think one, that there's an assumption and that it's going to materially improve the engagement. You know, like, how do we know that this is actually going to work? And I bring this up because similarly, we had we're involved with the Rotary Club, and we reached out to the Rotary Club to NPR and to a couple of different radio stations for some advertisements. And the comment back from them was, these advertisements are so fast and a lot of times people are not picking them up. So it is a big expense that people may not hear very quickly. The other thing is, what kind of measurable success criteria, like, how many additional participants are expected, or what constitutes success, and do radio audiences overlap with the civic participants that we want, and how will effectiveness be evaluated? So my thought is, separately, we're also looking at potentially revamping the website
And I would think that money would better be spent there, that we can direct somebody to people to a source and have information there. That is also going to be something that's going to maintain, remain after we get through this, ends policy evaluation, is my opinion. So. That's.
Yeah, piggyback off of that, I do think that there is a real problem. I don't know if radio will. So like I work in like employment recruitment, so like when you're driving in the car, like you hear something and like you're not gonna go to a link to do that. Did Vox have any there? My question is about like digital ad almost like, so like when people are watching YouTube or listening to Spotify or Pandora, even like might be, I don't know, it's Pandora, but maybe like have regional geofencing ads like for living in South Burlington, which I definitely which might be a better way to spend money if we did one. That way someone can click on a link or, follow like the link to our website, to our Eds Policy website or something like that. There's real actionable clicking versus just.
We did also get a quote from Vox to do digital.
But that's not included in.
It's not on this one, I can pull it up. But it was around about $1,300. I mean, obviously you can kind of tune it up or down. I mean, just to respond to Jen's comment, I think that when you have a really good website, but you don't have a way to drive people to it, it's like if a tree falls in the forest, does anybody hear it? And, I think that when we went and looked for consultants for this process, and, we asked Joe, like, do you think it makes sense for us to spend $20,000-$30,000 on a consultant? And he said, well, yeah, you're doing this for the first time in 10 years, it's an important thing. And so I think what we've managed to do on the Eds committee is we've stayed on the low end of our consultant costs. And so I think that this is, you could almost imagine this as being money that we didn't spend on the consultant, rolling it into helping the consultant to bring people in for our focus groups.
I don't think we can directly say it's going to result in 3 more people, which, 51 divided by 3, that's the cost per person. Well, we're gonna be able to
I would hope we
something like that, right? No, and so I will say, on another project that I worked on, I expressed the exact same skepticism. The reality is that the reach of radio around here is substantial. And it does I think to Seamus's point, we have a school community that goes to our school website. Non-school community, I think, is probably far less likely to go to the website unless accessed through some other means. Front Porch Forum is another way because lots of non-school community are on there and that doesn't cost us anything. And that is definitely a part of what's going on. Our individual outreach. I do support it. I think it's one way to help us attempt another way to break out of this box of garnering broader interest. And that interest is really actually quite critical to how our ends are defined within policy governance. It speaks of the moral ownership, which is the entire community. And we don't tap into the entire community. But I also can't offer Jen any assurance that we'll get 1 more person. It's my experience that it did work for the context that I was in at the time. A lot of people that came in said they heard about us.
Can I, what about Facebook? We are supposed to be writing articles for the other paper. We can't, it's a school board. I don't think this is all that unusual. And we are supposed to be writing, people can't come, that's fine, but we could be writing, which we don't. And
Well, we did
well, but we don't regularly. I've been on this board for 3.5 years. You're really supposed to do it once a month. And, we're not. And so that's a really key thing that we're missing. They do expect it from us every month. And then, there's Facebook. Everybody's on Facebook. My mother's 88. They're all on Facebook. So that's generations outside the school. So I think there are plenty of things we could do that we're not really doing.
I am curious about what Daisy has to say.
I appreciate that, thank you. I have to completely, Alyssa almost stole my thunder when she said, when we are in recruitment and we are looking to hire people and we want to get to the broadest, spread the broadest net that we possibly can, it is not radio. Your costs that you just said for $5,100, and I'm sorry, I don't know why this is going in now, is extremely cheap. We recently went through and tried to get, and went to several different locations. It was $10,000. And then went out to other organizations or other school districts that tried radio ads, failed miserably. And the cost that they spent on that, they should have, and they said, you know what got us really good? These were for also people that were trying to recruit police officers. The city, we had a dire need to do that, and everybody was trying to steal them from other people, and everybody was trying to offer sign-on bonuses, and even $10,000 wasn't bringing people in. But I will say, one of the things I might suggest is your superintendent just went out to I don't even know how many groups it was, 50 groups? 3 Qs. Yeah. 3 Qs. His 3 Qs was so highly successful. And now that we have those contacts and that relationship with those groups, we gotta go to them. Those are folks that, it's not just, it's the community. It's not just individuals that have students in our schools. So yes, I was completely agreeing. Sorry, I agree with Jen, radio's not it. But you have, I should say too, one of the school districts said movies. Advertising at the movie theater was extremely cheap, and hits a lot of people. So anyway.
That's awesome. If I can just add, so Mike, I was making notes. Yeah, thank you, Daisy. And I think, maybe a lower cost phased approach paired with targeted community engagement. And I did write down Daisy Joe's 3 Q groups, which I think feels more proportional and defensible publicly while still addressing the engagement concerns. So I had written down senior centers, libraries, faith communities, recreation leagues, apartment community associations, local employers, city newspapers, civic organizations, outreach through social media, front page forums, other community partners, so all of that. But I think at the end of it all, having an improved website and leaving QR codes around town and driving people to that could be helpful, is what I was thinking. Because at the end of it, I do want to come out of this year, hopefully with an improved website for the school.
Jean, ready to jump up?
I just wanted to, first, I feel like we've popped Seamus's balloon. He looks very depleted.
Oh, no, I have more to say. Don't worry about me.
I just wanted to share that, about Front Porch Forum, you guys have a pretty short runway on, so doing some print ad, we've been advertising our, RFPs in the other paper, and just recently, I saw some folks posting online about how dreadful the mail service is. I've experienced that. I know some of my colleagues in other towns are experiencing that. So, and that's affecting that print, those print ads that we're putting up that we're just not receiving, being received in folks' mailboxes in a timely fashion. So I think you have that quick turnaround working against you. And I hate to say this, but your topic isn't super sexy, right? So, people came tonight because they're fired up about something that they really, believe in and are concerned about. And so this, I think, doesn't light that big of a fire for folks. I think even people are still, as we are all kind of well, what is this? When you did this 10 years ago, people are still sort of struggling, even if you did radio ads, would they even understand what you were talking about, right? To that end, I did want to say that I think that the Front Porch Forum really does work. It does get so many folks that aren't connected to the school community, and the turnaround is so quick on that. Joe put out a call for folks who were interested in joining the SB Foundation board. And he got 16 people that responded that were really interested in being a member of that board. And that board has like 2 members right now. So I was amazed by that. Unfortunately, I will share also that I put out, some of you may have seen, please join my finance and facilities committee. Also not a super sexy topic. My dear friend, Tim Jarvis, is the one and only person in the entirety of South Burlington that has responded. But nonetheless, I do think that that's a really good avenue that we hadn't pursued in the past. And also, I just want to share that I think that might be a good offer for you.
Well, I'll just put in, a final plug here. I think the big picture in the state is that maybe everything's gonna change, right? That's what we keep hearing is like, well, maybe everything's gonna change. But then we hear from our legislators, well, actually, nothing's gonna change. And it's gonna be voluntary and it's gonna be in 5 years. And so what that means for us as a board is that every year we're gonna have to come to the voters with a budget and maybe a bond vote, right? And we barely squeak by, right? We get 51.8% of the vote. Whereas in Burlington, they get 70%, right? So if we ever want to have nice things for our kids in terms of, getting a community that actually feels like the school board is listening to them and is, going in the direction that they want, I think that we have to really massify our outreach to them. And, the conversion rate on radio, maybe it's only 0.1% or something like that. But it does reach a lot of people. And if we craft the message to say, listen, this is the school board saying, you own the schools, you have a say. I think that might help us with our overall legitimacy. And I gotta say, in terms of targeted outreach, it's something that we've mentioned. We only have a couple weeks before the focus groups start. And I have personally reached out to all of the HOAs, all of the major employers. And you guys have also reached out to a lot. The conversion rate is really low on targeted too.
The list that Jen. I'm sure that we could pick through that list and really reach out to a lot of people, but I think between the 3 of us, we've reached out to a lot of employers, a lot of people.
This meeting was announced at the senior center's lunch today. We have a very targeted approach, but at the end of the day, I think you just have to hit a big audience, if you have such a low conversion rate. And also, even if they don't come, they still heard the message that the board is listening. And that could be, that's the thing. If we go down on a school budget, we're not talking $5,000. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? And the community has to believe in it. And if they don't think that we're listening to them, why should they vote for us?
Radio can capture non-traditional school, even Front Porch Forum, right? There's a certain demographic that goes to that. There are certain demographics that don't go to that. I like the wide reach, because it is remarkable to me, in the age of Spotify. I listen to a lot of Spotify too, but how many people still listen to radio?
I do.
Does anybody want to make a motion on this?
You gotta call for the orders of the day. We are quite behind.
Can I ask just a quick question though? Has there been, would local media perhaps provide coverage and interviews rather than paid advertising? Could you go to? Maybe consider that?
We should, it is incumbent on us to do that no matter what. But I don't think the issue here is that we've got focus groups coming up just in a few weeks, and we have been for the last few weeks being very targeted, and we're not getting, we got to fill these things up. So I'm not sure. Again, and we're not talking about that much money in the scope of a community that spends $73 million on its schools. learn, reminding the community that they're in charge and that they should have some input, I think it's a small dollar amount. But I'm also happy to move on. I would entertain a motion to approve spending $5,000 on radio ad or $5,000 on ads, like we could also reallocate some of it to digital. But I would entertain a motion to spend $5,000 on ads for the policy update.
I'll make the motion. I think it deserves its full process.
Right. Michelle moves. That's it.
I'll second so we can talk about it.
Emily seconds. Any discussion?
So when you say ads, I mean, we got what you sent, but now it sounds like you're pivoting to say, maybe we'll be looking into different, I don't want to slow the process down. I don't want to just squash the conversation. I do understand that money could be spent and it could possibly lead to people coming. I don't think it's a bad idea to spend money to try to get more community involvement. I understand. I like the idea of it. I also like the idea of what Daisy mentioned and what Alyssa mentioned. I'm wondering if we were to approve the committee to come up with their idea of where to spend it now that we've had this conversation, instead of saying, yes, spend it right on that, what you told us in that piece of paper.
Right. I think the motion is designed to be specifically for that, based on the feedback we got from Daisy and Alyssa around like focusing on digital more than radio. So the motion as it stands on the table is just to set a $5,000 limit for ad spending for this. So any further discussion, and this is an action item, so we're open for public comment.
I just think that still feels a little high to make.
Can I comment?
Yes.
One thing that I was thinking of is we're not reaching any multilingual families with radio ads likely. And I mean, I personally don't think you're gonna get many people just from throwing radio ads up there. I think it's a good idea, but I'm wondering if we're not really doing the things like the newspaper ads or the front porch forum thing, like, are we doing those consistently?
We're doing those things. I do want to kind of be clear that
we're
not sitting here saying radio is the answer to all things and that's all we're gonna do. We've already been doing those.
But Laura said that we're not really doing.
We're not
I know
writing the
that.
articles. We are
But there was
not.
an article about this in the other paper.
1 month ago,
We're not
we
reading
put
articles.
We're not writing articles. You're writing letters to the
But we
editors.
did write an article about
But
this
why?
1 month ago,
But
1
why?
month ago. So, yeah.
Okay, great.
And I think this is part of
I
it.
just
Like,
wanna
I
be,
think
you know, it's
people love
hard to
be
hear
sure
what you're not doing,
because
what you're
something
doing.
like, just something is such a.
Okay, you can dismiss me.
No, go ahead, Laura.
I'm saying that we don't do a regularly scheduled monthly article. In fact, articles appear and I don't even know, like, there's no communication among us about who's gonna be writing. Things just appear. I'm as surprised as anybody reading the paper. That's really not how it's supposed to work. I mean, we're supposed to have a topic and once a month we write on. That's all people hear from us. That's what our state legislators do. And then we're not. And I see things from all of you. You're all collaborating.
Well, to be clear, we have to collaborate in the context of
Well, great, but
open meeting
you,
law.
but you could let me know that you're doing that and you don't. So I don't know. So
I
I
think,
actually do have a problem with that too.
I think a
So-
good agenda item would be to bring up this topic again in the context of restarting that regular communication.
Yeah.
We interrupted you. You didn't get a chance to finish your
Yeah,
point. I'm
I
sorry.
just, what I was hearing was that we're not really doing the ads in the paper. So my point was, maybe we should just like do the things that are already on our list better first. And see if that's helpful. I also think, like, it sounds like you're really trying to connect with people, like, through the city. And I think the rec department would be a good place to go and all those events. And what about sending out a survey to ask people how they would like to be reached? Or like what would work? My colleague mentioned maybe a QR code, like a printout that we could hang in different businesses that people could take the survey or email it out or something. But I think honestly, people don't like to come to these meetings because they get like, people get worked up, like even just about ads in the paper, like. I'm like all anxious right now and just about asking, like, are we or are we not putting ads in the paper? So I think we just need to make it a welcoming environment. And what if you use the money for like incentives to get people to come to your focus groups, like childcare or I don't know.
I mean, one other thing too to add, because you're bringing up, like, we've got such a great partnership with Jesse Baker and the city of South Burlington. And now they're doing all these incredible things. They're having the run in the dark, you know, the glow run, and they just had the Illuminate Vermont. I mean, they have all these things. We could be at these things and set up a table and say, hey, you know.
I think a lot of those people already vote for the school budget. And I think that a lot of the people already.
Well, like the music at the park, I mean, there's thousands of people that show up at those things, and so I'm just saying, like. Being out there and, you know, kind of to Laura's point too, being a consistent presence in the community and showing up at things like that, I think we gotta think outside of the box.
Yeah,
Just
sure.
Connecting with people.
Could we recognize Jerry online?
And also, just before Jerry speaks, I do think we should move on because we're spending a lot of time talking about this and we actually have things that this district is depending on us to do. And we're just not getting to where we're sitting around admiring this problem. And I would like to call for the orders of the day and get us back on track, because we're a half an hour behind.
Jerry's live. Okay, Jerry, can you hear us?
I rarely agree with Laura Williams, but I agree there. Sorry, I have to run out and help an elderly neighbor with a project. And I did want to ask one very short question about item number 9. You have lots of new hires, which are said to be for 1 year only for 2025-26. Does that mean they're being hired for 5 or 6 weeks? Because that's all that's left for the rest of the semester. Do I understand that correctly?
No.
I don't
Could
think
you?
so.
You there?
Is that not correct?
Although, are we allowed to talk about
We can't talk, Jerry, thank you for your question. I think that the board will, in our consent agenda, we will be sure to clarify that at the right time.
Okay, I'll just list it as you are going to do that. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Jerry.
Yeah.
Did you have any other comments, Daisy, about the?
Just operational, Jean Marie and I were discussing, we are right now in budget freeze time because it's the end of the fiscal year. Meaning that if you haven't already, our purchasing requirements and spending or deadlines have already passed. Meaning that if you did not submit a purchase order just to do your purchasing something and it's too late for this fiscal year.
Could it be added in the, so you're saying that the school board can't spend from the budget?
I am saying that right now, the rest of the school district is on a budget. We're at the budget freeze time, meaning that we had to submit anything that we were gonna purchase for the rest of the school year. Of this fiscal year, we had to do that by the 10th of last month.
Sure.
And we just 2 weeks ago, we had to purchase those things. So now we are in a point where we're not supposed to spend money unless we already have submitted the purchase.
I think that's an operational question.
Yeah.
Joe to figure out. I think we should vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that's 3 votes. All right, the motion fails. All right, the next item on the agenda is the Legislative Advocacy Committee. Jen, I think this has been a suggestion of yours. Can you give us an update on that?
Yes, so during our March 18th meeting, it was discussed that we form or explore a legislative advocacy committee. And the thought here is that we would stay focused, coordinated on issues that impact our schools. It would be a small group, maybe 2 to probably 3 board members, the superintendent, that keeps in touch with our legislators, tracks key bills, and brings any recommendations back to the board. It would be great to include community voices in an advisory way, so we're hearing different perspectives without complicating any decision making. One of the questions is whether it would start now or during during this session or during the next session. And so that would be it. So the first question is, do we want to have a small group focused on legislative actions, issues that are going on in this session? And I believe the current session ends in June, I think.
Yes.
Okay, so that's one of the first ones. And then who would be on it? Board only versus perhaps advisory voices from the community. Any must follow topics we would want to be focused on, such as education funding, foundation formula, redistricting, healthcare cost pressures, special education funding, property tax impacts. Some core work that we might do is checking in with legislators, tracking priority bills, bringing recommended positions to board. I mean, there's a lot here, Yep.
I already do all of that with the VSBA because I'm on, and I get the weekly updates from the state house. So, and I'm going to we have our meeting on Montpelier next Wednesday.
Okay.
So I get all of that. I can forward that information to you if you like.
Yeah,
Or you can join me on the VSBA. They do.
Okay. Okay.
Well, there's also space for this board to have.
Right, to have it, but I think the thought is at the end, like having some kind of summary that could come back and a recommendation, so it would actually be, that we could communicate.
That's what I
out.
used to do. I used to do that.
Okay.
I used to be on the agenda.
Okay,
So.
so that was it, that was the thought.
And since we're a policy governance district, I think what we had talked about with Joe, his advice had been if we basically tied the committee to the legislative session, which I think what you were saying is basically say, form a committee that's for this session, it dissolves.
Yep.
And then when the next one starts, form a committee for that session, and then it dissolves.
Yeah, because so often, I mean, what I hear is, oh, we need to go and talk to, make our voices heard. And it's like, well, what does that mean? I think we need to galvanize around a topic and say, this is important, this is, where we're gonna advocate. And to whether it's folks on the board and I hear what you're saying also, Laura, with VSBA, but I think it would be a little bit more tangible for people within South Burlington to perhaps be, if they're interested in it.
Well, they ask us as VSBA members how they should lobby. So like I'm already in that world right now. So we have meetings once a month and they'll say, these are the bills are coming up. How do you want us to lobby?
Yeah,
So
and
we do have a lot of say.
I think that, what I've heard is that the legislative committees like to hear testimony from like normal people, and like people, so like South Burlington residents would be very effective advocates for South Burlington issues. And so if there was a committee whose job, of course, was to talk to legislators, but also to get community members to go and testify for things that we care about in the State House, that could be very effective. And I think part of the problem in terms of communication, which goes back to our previous topic, is that I think that if there are few people who engage with our school board, there are probably even fewer people who engage with the VSBA. It's kind of one level above. So it's kind of a all hands on deck suggestion here is to have our school board organizing South Burlington people to advocate on in the legislature, and also have, like you're saying, the VSBA, which has, I think, a lot of sway, also advocating. So I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
Right. Yeah, I mean, so that was it. And I think it's the opportunity to do more engagement for people within the community that otherwise would not be engaged with the SBA.
Do we have anybody besides Jen who'd be interested in being on this committee?
Student reps, I would, but I'm leaving.
So it is interesting. I get the weekly VSB update that I do read what's happening in Montpelier. Like I forget exactly what's happening in Montpelier. Like here are the bills. Like they're gonna start hearing testimony from House 995 this week.
And they do ask us to come.
And that, so that's awesome. So
So
I think maybe it would be helpful if you have the time to write a monthly summary. And I'm pretty tapped out between the ends and everything that I don't have right now, but it is of interest. I guess I would say.
And I think I agree, because that's the thing, like, I like the idea of it. Can I be a part of this and lead this? I don't know, but I feel like there's more that we need to do in this space. And maybe it's just a matter of providing a summary and having some kind of an update to the board more frequently than just seeing the updates that come out through the SBA.
I don't know, I don't know. It is, I mean, I definitely think as a board member, it's of interest, but.
Maybe we should, bring this back up after Aaron's policy is updated. So maybe back in the fall, we take this back up.
Works for me.
Does that make sense? Does anybody wanna entertain further action on this right now?
I guess my only additional comment is in terms of the current push and the potential extension of the legislative session over the education parts. That would be a call to do something now. But I'm with the rest of you, I have no bandwidth. Yeah, to spend a lot of time in Montpelier.
Yeah, I mean, my personal opinion is that advocates of public schools are putting themselves in a position where they're resisting change, and it's looking like another season of no reform to education, and I think that that's gonna be it's gonna be a risk, and I don't think there's anything, I think this board has already taken action saying that we're open to, you know, big changes as a way to, you know, ensure the future of our public schools. But I think that the direction that this legislative session is going in, I think is a pretty
Status quo.
conservative status quo. And so I'm not sure there's much we can do more than we've already done, by passing that resolution a couple of months ago.
Can I ask a clarifying question that I don't know is for right now?
Always.
You just said that this board has made a statement about something, but technically this board hasn't made a statement about anything, because this is a new board.
Oh, this is a
I'm
new
on the
board. That's right.
So would that statement still stand for South Burlington? Like that board made that statement.
Right, the South Burlington School Board with a
At that
different
time.
set of members.
Like, so like that statement still stands at that time. Like,
We've taken it off our website because it just felt like it had aged out.
got it, okay, so.
Yeah, and ultimately it doesn't.
That's what, yeah, no, that's what, like,
Anything-
it's a new board technically.
I mean, it's a signal of something, but it doesn't obligate anybody to anything.
Yeah.
Not individually, it's a board voice, so even if you weren't on it, you don't support it, you're vocally opposed to it. It's to kind of holds to that board voice, but it doesn't matter because it's not there.
Yeah. All right. Shall we move on to child nutrition, maybe? The next item on the agenda. So we're considering transferring from the general fund to the food service fund. Jean Marie, would you like to?
So at our last meeting, you heard from my colleague, the Director of Nutrition Services, Ron Kettner. And she sort of explained the situation, and I wanted to give you folks an opportunity to sort of sit on that before we made any decisions. I do want to reiterate a couple things. First of all, it's incredibly unusual for school districts in the state of Vermont for their nutritional service programs to be self-funded. We are unique in that position, and that really is all a credit to Rhonda and the work that she's done in her tenure here, which is somewhere between 10 and 14 years, I think. We were in a large deficit when she got here. So the crux of the problem is a little bit of a change in accounting, and then additionally, our expenses are outweighing our income, our staffing costs and our food costs, which I'm sure all of you are also recognizing. Again, want to give credit to Rhonda for the adjustments that she's made in her menu planning and recipes. She shared with me today that she's taken the salad bar offline at the middle school. We're really, unfortunately, a very low participation in that. It requires a staff person to sort of manage it. and the expenses, like right now, a case of tomatoes costs $90. So, that is exponentially higher than it was not long ago. So, for that reason, we are in a situation right now where we have some funds in our general fund that we would like to transfer over. We think that we're gonna clear this year in, essentially break even. That's Rhonda's goal. To say she despises being in a deficit is putting it lightly. So our request is that we move $350,000 out of the general fund into the special, I want to get the wording right so I can tell you what her line is called. She is called a special revenue fund. And so we'd like to make that change now because we did not allocate any adjustments to the nutritional services line for the next school year. And that's where we really are concerned that we will be in a deficit. So because we are not in a deficit now, we'd like to move that money for her for next year.
Is there any board discussion on this or,
Just a question.
Sure.
What's the risk to the general fund? I mean, generally you said you think there's enough money to cover this deficit.
Yeah.
Is there any risk associated with that?
No, we have, to Daisy's point earlier, we need to close our books as quickly as we can. And so we asked to stop spending by the last POs go in April 10th and purchasing ends by May 1st. So that we have a good picture of where we are coming in. Additionally, in the current budget year, there was an assumption made around what the union contracts were going to end at. So there was some excess funds in there, just as a wild guess when they, an educated guess when they put those funds.
That was back to last July.
Yeah, I guess you're constantly pre-planning way in advance. So, so gratefully, we are in a situation this year where we can we can comfortably move those funds for next year.
And do you still expect an excess then out of the general fund?
I don't want to answer that. I'm not in a place where I can answer that for you. April would know that, and I know that she just ran. I will be presenting for you my, one of my monitoring reports. I forget which one it is, but we'll have some refresh documents for you for the May 20th meeting. So if you wanted to, we could wait until then, for you to make the motion. I don't have any concerns.
No, I'm not. Personally, I'm not expressing concern about it. I just wanted to verify that transferring to satisfy one deficit
Isn't creating an issue anywhere else. No. So when we create these early PO and purchasing deadlines, it allows us to have a good idea of what our ending balance is going to be so that we can make any adjustments. So part of what they're doing is when somebody looks at their balance and realizes they are in a deficit, they can move it from one line to another. So some of that work has already been done and I don't have any concerns about any issues with this move.
well, I would, is there any more board discussion on the? Any other concerns?
I mean, I don't have any specific concerns. I think it goes back to just the transparency and understanding like, okay, what was the general fund? And if there's monies that we now can comfortably move this and there isn't a risk, being able to clearly see that, I think would be really helpful.
Yeah.
That's my only.
Yeah.
Hey, this is what we were supposed to have. We didn't allocate for that. We now have this deficit. I mean, just, whether it's a concise memo or something that we can put out just to kind of clarify it, but then also when you're doing your monitoring down the road and we're looking at these, I think being able to speak to this would be helpful.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we moved money from here to here and this is where it came from. Remember that discussion? So that we're tracking the money, right?
Yeah, it is. I refer to the budget as a gigantic amoeba because it is just constantly changing. So it's hard to really pinpoint. It's like we can run a report for you that's accurate for that moment in time, but things are constantly changing, so.
I get that.
So yeah, I'll have, like I said, refresh
It's
documents.
super high level.
Yeah.
Like just a higher level.
Yeah.
I mean, I know people are gonna get into the weeds on things and be able to see it, and that's obviously very important, but just for the community to understand, because you know, that's a pretty significant sum. So to be able to say we can comfortably move it because we were, you know, over here or over projected this or that. But again, it comes back to accountability and how well we're stewarding that. I think
Yeah.
that's, I think.
Yeah, our biggest piece of the pie is the salary and benefits line, right? So when we're projecting that in the previous fiscal year, they're trying to plot what the health insurance rate will be and how many employees will be and what they'll be hired at. One of the things that I think you've heard Daisy talk about earlier is the struggle for hiring paraeducators. Like there's like at least 20 because it has been over the course of the year. So we have to budget for those, anticipating that we will fill them. But then as they don't get filled, you know, that adds, and that's a pretty sizable, can be a pretty sizable number, so.
Right. No, it all makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that would be my comment. Those two things. One, just if you have it, some kind of concise summary of what happened, where the money's coming from and how we can account for it, I think would be helpful to have in our minutes, however that shows up. Cause I know you talked about it before, but it's more concise. And then just looking forward, having more visuals on how some of these things are moving would be my request. Any comment?
Okay, well, I would entertain a motion to transfer $350,000 from the general fund to the food service fund. Jen motions. Michelle seconds. Is there any discussion? And this is an action item, so there's room for public comment. Nobody? No one. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, the motion passes. All right, the next item on the agenda is additional employee added to the employee severance plan. Do you have information about that, or Jean Marie?
I do not. Daisy, do.
We had an individual that had an unusual situation happen that they did not meet the initial deadline to apply to Senate. It resulted in some legal, how do I say, our attorneys talking back and forth, and we agreed to add that individual and allow them to sign up for the severance package after the deadline.
Okay, so the board is being asked whether it's okay with us that in spite of this having happened after the official deadline for the employee severance plan, we're okay with that arrangement that you've made to move forward. Okay, is there any board discussion on that? I would entertain a motion to allow the additional employee to be added to the employee severance plan as negotiated by the school district. Michelle moves.
I'll second.
Alyssa seconds. Is there any discussion? And this is an action item, so public comment as well.
I very much appreciate you having that discussion and accepting this.
All right, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. The motion passes. All right, the next item on the agenda, there's a couple of first readings of district policies, one on wellness and one on student use of cell phones. My understanding is that these are due to state requirements changing. And so I believe that the wellness policy, which is the first one on the agenda, we already have a wellness policy and there are updates to it based on the state. And then, so let's start with that one. Do we have any comments from staff about what in particular is new here or why we should be considering this? New besides the state law aspect?
Are you asking what?
Do you have any information about, that you think would be relevant to the board about what's different in this wellness policy and why it's important.
Um,
And would you step up so we can get you on the recording? Thank you.
Welcome. I'm Sarah Pineda, District Nurse and Wellness Policy. Yeah. And this is Jess Leclerc. Jess is our school health liaison from the Vermont Department of Health.
Yeah, I'm one of your community partners, and I support all of the Chittenden County schools, and I've worked on wellness policy and helped schools pass their new wellness policy in line with the new recommendations for 4 other districts prior to coming to help with South Burlington. I know a lot about wellness policy, so I'm just kind of here as backup on that.
Great.
And so a wellness policy is kind of our district's commitments to nutrition, health education, physical activity, and other things that keep our students and staff and community well. Our previous policy was last updated in 2016. And with the wellness policy, you have to do a triennial assessment. And the triennial assessment was right at the time of COVID. So every school district kind of got behind with their policies being updated. So we were tasked with updating this policy last spring. And the state did make a couple of adjustments, but not many.
Right.
I'm gonna speak to.
Well, there were a few whoops, I'm sorry. Yeah, so essentially for the wellness policy, what's changed is that health education is now a part of wellness policy in Vermont. And that's not true at the federal level. So most of the categories that you'll see on that wellness policy are what's required at the federal level. But Vermont added the health education component, and we also did the other school-based activities to promote wellness. Those are both Vermont requirements that were added to wellness policy when they revised. Wellness policy dates back to the time of World War II, when they were recruiting forces for our military, and I want to say it was a higher number than I think. It was either 9 or 11%. I'd have to look it up. Of the people that were being drafted were not able to serve because of malnutrition. And that kind of was like, whoa, and that's kind of where the school lunch program started. Later, they added the school breakfast program, but a lot of that was around like having just healthier people. So it used to be really food focused, but it's expanded kind of what's involved every time the WIC, it's part of the Authorization Act that WIC does too, but we're in that same thing, and that's when our wellness policy gets updated at the federal level. But like I said, Vermont added a few things. And then the VSBA did produce a model policy, and the AOE produced a wellness policy guide. And a lot of what you'll see in there is stuff based on those 2 documents. We also, as Sarah said, did a triennial assessment. So the other part of, like under the other school-based wellness activities, a lot of that is based on what we were seeing in our schools. And from talking to, we were interviewing administrators, school counselors, PE teachers, health educators, really all the folks that kind of touched on the different pieces of our current wellness policy to look at, how well are we following our wellness policy now? What do we feel like is missing from wellness policy? And then just kind of put that all together to create a stronger document.
Okay, so it's more than just state required. It sounds like this was a holistic effort to really bring this up to date with the latest.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was great. We put a lot of work into this, and when we were first asked to update it, having Jess as a consultant, since it hadn't been updated in a bit, was absolutely we were super lucky to have her guiding us through this process. And I think we really dove in and collected a lot of information from staff about what was actually happening.
before we made the changes.
So the big question is, will kids get longer recesses?
Our students have pretty long recesses now. That's one of the things we found out in the assessment.
Are there other board questions?
Are there any direct impacts on teacher responsibilities? Does this increase teacher responsibilities in any way?
It's a great question. It doesn't really increase responsibilities so much as create guidelines for different things that may impact teachers. For example, using food as a reward is not best practice with kids. It's you know, kids part of that whole disordered eating thing where, you know, our rewards shouldn't be based on food, just like food is something we eat when we're hungry. But there's a lot of other ways to reward students that is better for them. Physical activity is important for learning and being active. And so there's like, here are some just suggested things you could do if you are a person who gives food as a reward. Here are some other possible things you could do. So it's more a matter of like perhaps shifting mindset for some folks, but it isn't really a different responsibility.
Is there training that goes with that?
There is, as part of our policy is to inform staff of what our policy is and the changes we made and what our procedures will be. One of the things that I actually think it will help with time for teachers, because I think people spend a lot of time trying to figure out what our guidelines are. And because this policy touches so many different pieces of our schools, I think it will actually be really helpful to streamline things, and people can, our goal was to really make it a guide for teachers and staff that's the answer. It's like just really easy, and so they can use it as a reference as well.
I mean, I would like to say, I think it was it's good. I enjoyed reading it. I appreciate that. There were a lot of things I didn't know. A couple of comments I had was, consider possibly adding some measurable outcome or metrics like participation rates, wellness indicators, or compliance targets.
Yeah, and that actually comes out in the assessment.
It
So,
does.
yeah, so every time the assessment is done, we are measuring those pieces. So the way that we do the assessment, we use the WellSat, which is a national tool that was developed by UConn's Red Center for Food Policy. And we had to add a few sections because they don't do health ed as part of theirs. They don't do the stuff that Vermont does. So we had to kind of add those, but other than that, it's based on it. And in that, we look at two things. We look at the current policy, how strong is it? By just like, even if you don't know if people are doing this at all, just looking at it as a policy, how strong is it? And we were able to assess our current policy. Then we look at the practical, like you're getting at. So there's 4 categories things can be in. There's strong policy and aligned practice. So that's, we say we're doing it and we are doing it. And that's like a bucket that some of the work is in. Then there's, it's in our policy, but it's not in our practice. And so that tends to be like, maybe we need to think about our procedures, because do we believe in this? Is this a value that we have as a district and want to do? And if so, we need to be stronger with our procedures. Then there's great work we might find that we're doing, but it's not recognized in our policy. And that's another opportunity to write the policy to reflect who we are. And then there are the things that either are not in policy and we're also not doing it yet, but maybe it's a good idea. And especially it's a good idea if they're a federal requirement or state requirement. And so we focus on those ones first. But then we also look at like what the community says. You know, it may not have been brought up in policy before, but our community might be saying, hey, this is a need that we have. And then we look at evidence-based best practice and build policy around that.
Okay. Yeah, so then the other comment was, if it would be helpful to clarify perhaps how students, parents, or community input could be gathered and incorporated in an ongoing basis rather than just during the annual and the triennial assessments.
Absolutely. And the intention is to invite community members and students to our committee moving forward, and then have set meetings. Once the policy and procedures are in place, they recommend, I think, just twice a year, but
That's the minimum
Right.
requirement.
so we haven't set that schedule yet, but the intention is to have set meetings with our committee, which will include students, and community members or parents. And then also, we are developing our website to have all this information on it, and the triennial assessment will be public.
Yeah, and on the website, there is like a PowerPoint that's been created that's still kind of in the works, but it's essentially kind of talks people through like the basics of what is wellness policy and how can you get involved. And then there would be Sarah's email at the end, like, please reach out if you're interested. And so that's, I mean, it's one of several ways, but it's one of the ways to try to drive folks in, to feel like, hey, this is about you and your community.
Well, that's, I think, a great first reading to the members of the public, the draft of the policy F5 wellness is in the school board materials for today, and we will be having more readings of this. But yeah, thank you very much for the update, and thanks for your helping our district.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. It's what my job is. If any of you have other questions about wellness policy in general or anything to do with the stuff that we came up with, both of us are happy to answer those, and you could reach out anytime.
Great.
Thank
you very much. The
Thanks
next
for
item.
staying through this long meeting.
Yes. The next item on the agenda is policy F20, student use of cell phones. I believe this one is mandated by the state.
This one is.
Yes, so it is available in the board materials, if anybody wants to read it. We have had we had a update on cell phone use in schools and policy compliance earlier this year. And then I recently asked the superintendent about it, so is there any board comment on the policy? I don't think we need to read it.
But just a clarification, the distinction between this and what we have is that starting FY 26-27, it has to be in place. What we have now is the trial run.
Right.
Well, yeah,
To add something to.
Yes, please.
We also, at least at the high school, we don't have a policy about non-school issued devices right now. A lot of students use their personal laptops.
Oh,
So
that's a change.
that would be a change for people, and like watches.
Yeah.
And
So you can't
things.
bring your MacBook. You have
It's
to
like,
use
it lists like AirPods and things, that people use those. That will be a change.
unless it's in your iPad.
I did have a few comments.
Yes,
I
please.
read through this one too. I think it would be helpful to clarify whether the policy prohibits device use, access, or possession during the school day. And whether it applies during lunch, periods if people are going back and forth through classes, buses, extracurricular. I mean, I didn't feel like it was particularly clear, like it felt a little bit vague to me, and so that was one comment. I mean, if it could explicitly state when that would be appropriate. Was my.
Well, that's actually maybe a great opportunity for clarification. So I think that this is the policy, and it says, first of all, is the policy of the South Burlington School District to maintain a cell phone free school environment to promote focus and increase social cohesion among our students. And then it says the goal. And then down below, it says the superintendent shall establish procedures. So I think that the answer to that question would live in the procedures.
Is the procedure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we don't have to review or accept the superintendent's procedures as long as they fulfill whatever high level requirements are in this.
Okay.
The state law does say from arrival to dismissal, your policy has to be from arrival to dismissal.
Yeah, and I think perhaps that needs to be clarified, because it just, again, did it say that in there? I don't recall seeing that.
Yeah,
specific
talk about
language.
exceptions from I hear you.
During the academic day from arrival to dismissal.
Okay.
It's this.
And that prohibits use, access, and possession. Like,
By prohibiting student use of and access to during academic from arrival to dismissal.
But they could be in possession of.
Right, that is what it says here.
Yeah, when I took my high school tour, I was over at the high school last week. Patrick Berger almost took my phone away. I took it out and he said, "Don't take that away." And I said, "Okay, I'm sorry." I didn't know the rule, but like, so I think you could be in possession of it, and maybe Ally or Roman can correct me, like, I think it can be in your backpack, you're not gonna take it away, but
In theory,
it can't be out.
should be in your car.
It should be in your
Like,
car.
if someone has a vehicle, they say leave your phone at home or stuff, but as long as it's not seen. Like, it needs to not be visible during the school day.
Okay. And then another point is under family and guardian communication, I think it would be helpful to clarify there that, you know, as I was reading this, I thought, you know, families may contact students during the school day through established school office procedures, except in emergency situations. And then I was thinking, you know, there could be something explicitly mentioned that the district shall maintain procedures for timely communication with families, et cetera, during emergencies. But, you know, to kind of clarify that, because I also didn't feel like that was very robust, that particular statement. Families may contact students during the day through established school office procedures. Right, like, just to clarify that, because it's like, well, what do I need to get in touch with my kid? Because you may be looking at the policy, but you may not be then combing through to find the specific procedure. So I think as much of that upfront information that you can have as people are looking through it, that it's concise, that I'm like, oh, yeah.
Would you send that feedback to Joe?
Sure. I will.
I appreciate also that you're writing it down, but I think Jen, if you could provide just that pointed feedback directly to Joe.
And then I also think there's one last thing, the administrative responsibility section, I think it could be a little bit easier to digest. And that section might also benefit from emphasizing that there will be progressive, developmentally appropriate responsibility to violations. So, you know, I just think that could be streamlined. So, you know, consider emphasizing there might be restorative or corrective approaches before it gets to punitive, like, that's it, right? I'll send them.
Sure. Right, and I do remember hearing about the progressive discipline when Pat Burke presented with it.
I remember that too. Yep.
Although by us putting it into if the superintendent accepted the suggestion and put that in here, that would be us mandating something that might go above and beyond state law.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, I mean, the actual procedure, I mean, that's obviously gonna be up to like administration. Like, I'm just saying for the policy, like some of the language that could be clarified for the purpose of the public that's reviewing
Right.
this. That's all.
Right. Although, and your comments do remind me of the earlier situation we had this year with the video surveillance policy, where the school board had gone out of its way to add additional restrictions on the school district's action above and beyond state law. And so I think that we should always be asking when we do make policies like this, just to make sure that we're aware if we're restricting the district more than state law.
Right.
Requires. Which we have the right to do, I think, in some cases, but we should just be aware of it. Okay, well, I think that was a great first reading of F20, student use of cell phones. Is there any other board comment or questions on that? All right. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Do I have any objections to the minutes of the April 15th meeting? The accounts payables, the payroll warrants? Hearing none, the April 15th, 2026 minutes, the accounts payables and the payroll warrants are approved by consent. The next item on the agenda is to approve an AP voucher check to Essex Westford School District in the amount of $88,916.81. And also to Vermont Mechanical in the amount of $177,305.91. I would entertain a motion to approve that. Laura moves. Emily seconds. Any discussion? So again, this is a voucher check to Essex Western School District in the amount of $88,916 and to Vermont Mechanical in the amount of $177,305. Any questions? All those in favor? Yeah, aye. The motion passes. The next item on the agenda is any objections to the bids for snow removal, air handlers or laptops?
No objection, but I had a question.
Sure, of course.
So regarding the equipment, so it looked like the first Bobcat bid I saw was, 131.
Can I stop you and explain maybe?
Okay,
Because
please
it's
do.
a hot mess, yeah.
And be sure to clarify the question for the community if you know which one it is.
Okay, well, it was in regard to, it looked like the first bid came in, the second bid was $7,000 less. And I was curious, or $7,500 less, and I was curious why that was. That's the first part of the question. And then the second part was clarifying whether the revised proposal reflects the same equipment specifications and attachments of the original bid. If not, what changed? And then the third piece was briefly summarizing the rationale for recommending a Bobcat over a lower cost Kubota.
Happy to answer all of those quickly.
Okay.
When we put an RFP out, we asked the bidders to maintain their quote for 60 days. Yeah, that's hard for folks to do these days, particularly how around the technological equipment. The bidder was awarded the bid and came back to us and said, oh, sorry, the price went up by $3,500. So on second thought, we decided that we had to go back, and that was against policy, we had to go back out again, so we sent it all out again. And that bidder, same bidder, came back with a lower price than so we had the first price, the amended price, and now we have the second official bid. It's now the third price, and that is lower, $7,500. It is $7,500 lower. I have asked my team to line by line, make sure that this is exactly the piece of equipment that they want, exactly the same item that they were offered the first time. There's a change in the radio. Everything.
It's a sign we can spend that money on radio.
Radio, there's no radio in it, right?
Yeah, I think it went from a digital to a Bluetooth radio or vice versa. I don't know. I wish I had a better explanation for you on why it's lower the third time. I can explain to you why we would like to proceed with the Bobcat, and that is because the other equipment that we have is in that same, is also Bobcat equipment, and so the accessories are all interchangeable. That's, yeah.
Understand.
I wish I had a more logical.
Well, one of them, it said was the L95.
Yeah.
And then the other one, it didn't say that, so
It
I
is
was like,
false.
I wonder if it's
No,
like,
it's exactly no.
it's the P95 or the 94. Didn't know. Okay. Thank you
And I
for-
included that first letter and I added to it, and Delina was like, what in the heck is this? And I was like, I'll have to explain it to them, so I apologize,
thank you.
but yeah.
All right, well, thank you for your diligence, Jen. Are any other questions or objections to the bids on the snow removal equipment, the air handlers, the laptops? Then those passed by consent. And now we'll move on to the hire section. Would you like to say anything about the hire section?
I would love to say something about the hires. All of the individuals that were hired mid-year for a teacher position are hired for a 1-year contract only. That is every single person or everyone on the list where it says to fill an open position that is 1 year only for the 25-26 school year. Those individuals were hired mid-year and they were on a 1-year only contract. We are now requesting to hire them permanently. So they are moving from a 1-year contract to even though all the other teachers are 1 year, these individuals were only hired for that school year. And they don't
Which
have
was
anything.
last year.
Correct, which is this current year.
Right.
Correct, so we always have to rehire the 1-year contract only people into the next school year. which is also why those folks usually even though they're a new teacher being hired, they could be brought in at a step 11 instead of a step 10. We had a question about the maximum. Correct, they are not technically new, they've been with us for a year, so they are getting that credit.
Okay, so just for an example, so Angela Buchanan, it says 25-26 school year to fill an open position that is 1 year only. But she's been in that 1 year only position and now she's being offered the position full-time permanently. Okay, yeah, I had that same question that Mr. Silverstein had, so I was thinking that's how many weeks?
So all of the folks that have that statement, they are currently 1 year only contracts because they were hired mid-year.
Are the FTE, are those the same for the next year, or are they all?
Everything else in the position is the same.
I'm curious, not a part of a.
The FTE, the same, it is the exact same position.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing this many last year. Does the board have to approve the temporary positions for folks? I don't recall seeing.
No.
That's why there's so many.
Right. You don't approve 1 year contracts.
Got it, okay.
You do approve when you're taking a 1 year contract to approve.
Got it, okay.
But this is everybody after July 15th. I do said mid-year, but this is everybody that's hired after July 15th of the previous year.
That's correct.
So if you're hired in August, you're only on a 1 year contract.
Wait, but the board doesn't approve teacher 1 year on contract?
No, they didn't. They're a temporary position on it.
And one other thing, just to confirm, so the folks also, the FTE percentage or amount that's on here, that is what they will become in their full-time position. So if you have, for example, somebody that's a 0.20 FTE school psychologist, will they be hired at a full-time?
No, they will not. They're being hired at this level. So,
okay,
so for, Ally Bush, she is currently a 1.0, she's being hired for a 1.
Got it.
Katarina, currently at 0.2, is being hired for 0.2. They're being hired for the exact same position they are. And
okay.
Are there any questions or objections to the hires? Hearing none, then they pass by consent. So the final item on the agenda is for the review the May 20th agenda. So I will put that on my screen. So post-executive session, third community forum. I would appreciate everybody's help getting people out for that. It's a slog. And yeah.
The only thing I would say is I did happen to, while we were talking, and I may have just missed it because I've been traveling and out of town, but I happened to look at the letter that went to the other paper and the schools belong to you. And that's a very good article. The one thing that I would say is if we're putting another one out, I would specifically put in there when the forums are planned. Because we're saying for April and June or for April to May. So I put in the dates and where they're going to be. So it's one less thing that people don't have to go look up. They can plug it in their phone and put it in instead of, oh, now I gotta go to the website.
Absolutely, that one was before we had dates, that was the heads up, start looking for this. information.
Now it's not, yeah.
Now
It
we have
matters
dates,
if-
so we can.
Okay, so community forum on ends policy. Second reading of the two policies that we heard tonight, wellness and cell phones. 2.2 treatment of staff. 1.0 ends. So 2 monitoring reports, treatment of staff and ends. And then the continuous improvement plans that were required to have, I think, by federal law. And then a superintendent report on viewpoint discrimination. And then consent agenda.
What was this requested, so next.
I requested viewpoint discrimination.
We could probably give a update on student representative, include that, if you just wanna put that as a sentence. I'm thinking that out next week.
And one thing you may have seen, I've been sending information to Joe regarding the board website. And I know we had talked about
I will work with Joe on a couple of things here and there, and I've put a lot more time and thought into that. And I think it is something that it's a bigger priority item that we need to consider, possibly look at bringing someone in to help with. Updating the website beyond Joe's capacity to do that with all the other things that he has. So I would say perhaps putting some time on it to look at, and this is only the school board website component. It's not the district. It's only what we have, what's outward facing.
I think I added that to the agenda. If they want me to take it back off, and just let me know. Anything else that you think we should have on the agenda for our May 20th meeting? All right.
I will have a couple bid awards for you, some roof replacements, hopefully some Chromebooks, we can get our hands on them. Then something else I'm forgetting. Additionally. Oh God, there was one other thing. Oh, my fiscal monitoring report.
Fiscal monitoring report, is that the one that,
I'm not sure if it's 2.4 or 2.5.
is that the one where it's a quarterly thing? And we're doing it quarterly, or is it a preview of the thing that's gonna be done monthly, so that we don't have to do the quarterly thing? Or something?
We're still on the same cadence that we have not changed the original cadence yet, so. Well, we will.
I think we had never mind, Jerry.
Sorry, I can't read it. We're supposed to.
I know, I
read it
can't.
Staff as well.
Yeah,
on that.
yeah, that's what I was just thinking.
Yeah,
And I couldn't see it, yeah.
Okay, all right. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move.
Emily moves,
Second.
Jen seconds, any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Thanks, everybody. Oh, yeah, we probably have to sign, keep this up.